One day, without any warning, mysterious bluish gates appeared all over the world. These strange portals materialized in various locations, seemingly with no immediate effect on people's daily lives. They remained stationary, silent, and unexplained, leaving citizens wary but continuing with their routines. However, this sudden and unexplained phenomenon would soon change the course of history forever. Amidst the chaos and confusion caused by these bizarre gates, Han Yu-jin Han, a hard-working young orphan, went about his usual day. His life had never been easy, much like a tale out of a tragic storybook. He had struggled from an early age to survive. Without parents to guide or support him, he had shouldered the burden of responsibility, working tirelessly to provide for his younger brother. His colleagues at work, though seemingly kind, often treated him with a distant politeness. They would occasionally toss a bottle of water his way, offering casual compliments about his dedication and perseverance. Despite the hardships he endured, Yu-jin Han never complained. Every ounce of effort he put into his labor was for one reason alone: his younger brother's education. When asked about his plans for his paycheck, Yu-jin Han responded without hesitation. Every cent would go toward his brother's tuition fees. As he spoke, he shared their story, how they had been orphaned at a young age, forced to fend for themselves. He had sacrificed his own education to work and support his sibling, ensuring that at least one of them would have a brighter future. Taking out his phone, he proudly showed his coworkers a picture of himself and his younger brother, pointing out how strong and well-built his sibling had become over the years. His tone took on the affectionate yet overprotective nature of an older brother, murmuring about his little brother with deep care and admiration. That particular day was special. His brother's classes were ending early, and they had plans to spend time together afterward. Yu-jin Han was excited about their barbecue outing, looking forward to a rare moment of relaxation in his otherwise exhausting routine. As they finished loading up their truck and prepared for the next delivery, a discussion arose among the workers about the increasing workload they had been dealing with lately. Business had been demanding, but none of them could have anticipated how much their world was about to change. While they drove along their usual delivery route, something caught Yu-jin Han's attention. A new gate had appeared in the sky above them. Unlike the usual bluish hue they had grown accustomed to, this one bore a different color, a detail that set off warning bells in his mind. What concerned him even more was the fact that another gate had appeared on the very path his younger brother took to college. As he voiced his observations, his thoughts remained preoccupied with his brother's safety. Before he could dwell further on the matter, a loud crash echoed through the air. Something massive had collided with their truck, sending shockwaves through the vehicle. Instinctively, Yu-jin Han leaped out, rushing to assess the situation. What he saw left him in a state of disbelief. A towering pterodactyl-like creature loomed over them, its predatory gaze fixated on its newfound prey. The monstrous entity exuded an aura of menace, its wings casting an ominous shadow over the ground. But before he could fully process the situation, more of these winged beasts began emerging from the gate. The realization hit him like a thunderbolt. These gates were not just stationary anomalies, they were portals leading to dungeons. These dungeons, much like those described in fictional worlds, harbored creatures of nightmare and legend. And if left unchecked, these gates would eventually burst open in what would later be known as a dungeon break. If multiple gates were to break at once, it would lead to a catastrophic event known as the dungeon shock, a crisis that humanity was woefully unprepared to face. The world had just been thrust into an era of chaos, and millions would soon perish in its wake. In the midst of the chaos, Yu-jin Han's instincts kicked in. Spotting a wooden stick nearby, he grabbed it and sprinted toward the truck, determined to help his boss, who was still inside. As he reached him, he discovered something astonishing. His boss was standing firm, bravely facing the monster without fear. Something had changed within him. He had undergone what was called an awakening, a transformation that granted individuals newfound strength, enabling them to fight against these creatures. Those who experienced this phenomenon were referred to as hunters, and from that moment on, hunting monsters within dungeons would become the most critical profession in the world. That same day, in a twist of fate, Yu-jin Han's younger brother, Han Yu-hyun, also underwent an awakening. Unlike others, however, Yu-hyun's power was extraordinary. His abilities manifested in the form of black flames and ominous consuming fire that obliterated the monsters in his path. The boy whom Yu-jin Han had spent his entire life protecting had suddenly emerged as the world's first S-ranked hunter. 8 years passed since that fateful event. The world had adapted, but it had also changed beyond recognition. The dungeon shock had rewritten the rules of survival, and those who had awakened held the highest status in society. A news broadcast played on television, featuring an interview with a well-known female hunter named Yu-mi. She revealed her status window, a unique feature that only awakened individuals could see. This mysterious interface functioned as though they had been transported into a video game, displaying information about their abilities and skills. As the interview continued, Yumi demonstrated her nature-based power. With a simple motion, she conjured massive trees out of thin air, making them sprout instantly from the ground. She explained how her abilities had saved numerous lives during the Great Incident 8 years ago. Before her awakening, she had been struggling financially, barely scraping by. Her room had been a mess, overrun with mold and fungi, a reflection of the hardships she faced. But the moment she discovered her powers, everything changed. She quickly found work as a hunter, joining a small guild and delving into dungeons. Despite the dangers of these dungeons, they also provided immense opportunities. The resources gathered from them became invaluable, and the most profitable among them were magic stones, a new energy source that reshaped the global economy. These stones became the foundation of wealth, and high-ranking hunters amassed fortunes beyond imagination. Among those who reached the pinnacle of success was none other than Han Yu-hyun. The younger brother, Yu Jin-han, had worked so hard to support, had risen to legendary status in record time. Though he had once been just an orphan relying on his older brother's sacrifices, Yu-hyun had become not only one of the youngest awakened individuals, but also the youngest guildmaster in history. His influence and wealth were rumored to be unparalleled, with assets that exceeded comprehension. As the news segment continued, the reporter turned back to Yumi, asking if she too had become wealthy since becoming a hunter. The world had changed dramatically, and those with power now determined its course. What had once been an ordinary life for Yu Jin-han and Yu-hyun had turned into something unimaginable, an era ruled by hunters, dungeons, and the pursuit of power. Yumi, with a soft yet unwavering voice, denied the assumption that she had accumulated wealth as a hunter. She explained that she was merely an E-rank hunter, one of the lowest in the hierarchy, and had been carefully saving up to pay for her younger sister's tuition fees. Despite the dangerous nature of her job, the rewards were meager for someone of her rank. Her life revolved around scraping together whatever she could to support her family. Much like many other low-ranking hunters who barely earned enough to survive. Little did anyone know, the very next day, Yumi would become an unforgettable part of history. On what seemed like an ordinary dungeon raid, tragedy struck. She ventured into a dungeon, fully aware of the risks, yet hopeful that she would return as she always had. But fate had other plans. The raid went horribly wrong, and she met a gruesome end. Though she was retrieved from the battlefield and rushed to the hospital, her condition was beyond saving. This grim turn of events served as a chilling reminder of the other side of being a hunter. For all the glory, fame, and wealth the strongest ones amassed, the weakest were often reduced to mere statistics, forgotten casualties of the relentless battles against dungeon creatures. There was no guarantee of returning home once a hunter stepped into a dungeon. Those who entered did so knowing full well they might never see their loved ones again. Meanwhile, at another gate site, preparations for an upcoming raid were in full swing. Hunters gathered, checking their weapons, finalizing their battle plans, and mentally bracing themselves for the challenges ahead. Amidst this tense atmosphere, a loud, sneering voice cut through the air. One of the hunters, a burly, arrogant man, openly questioned the leader's decision to bring a so-called handicapped individual into the raid. His gaze, filled with disdain, fell on none other than Han Yu Jin-han. Yu Jin-han, unfazed by the insult, attempted to reason with the man, explaining that he could provide the team with buffs to enhance their combat abilities. But the bully was relentless. He continued his taunts, mocking Yu Jin-han's status as a hunter who barely scraped by, surviving only on the leftovers of others. Yu Jin-han had long been labeled the Nurturer, a title that, despite its seemingly positive connotation, had turned into a source of ridicule. Unlike other hunters who wielded overwhelming strength or devastating abilities, his talents were subtle, passive, meant to support rather than fight. However, what made him even more infamous was a peculiar phenomenon. He always managed to survive, even in situations where entire teams perished inside dungeons. The bully, clearly enjoying his verbal assault, took it a step further. With a cruel smirk, he suggested that even Yu Jin-han's own brother, the legendary Han Yu-hyun, had abandoned him. He claimed that Yu-hyun, who had risen to the top of the hunter world, saw no value in his pathetic older brother. That was the breaking point. Yu Jin-han's composure shattered as rage surged through him. His fists clenched, his voice trembled with fury, and without thinking, he lashed out, yelling at the man to shut his mouth. But his retaliation only made things worse. In an instant, the bully retaliated, kicking Yu Jin-han to the ground with ease. Before Yu Jin-han could recover, he felt rough hands gripping his collar, hoisting him up. The strength difference between them was painfully clear. He was nothing but an F-ranker, while his tormentor was a D-ranked hunter, someone who could overpower him effortlessly. With a mocking chuckle, the bully shoved him down again, taunting him to go complain to his brother if he dared. Coughing and struggling to regain his breath, Yu Jinhan lay on the ground, momentarily overwhelmed by pain and humiliation. Just then, the leader of the raid team approached. Unlike the others, the leader, an older, seasoned hunter named Lim Soku, was neither cruel nor dismissive. Using his own abilities, he strengthened Yu Jinhan's body slightly, helping him recover from the assault. With a calm yet firm tone, Lim questioned why Yu Jinhan was getting into fights before even entering the dungeon. He advised him to remain composed, warning him that he was nothing more than a minor figure in this brutal world. Though his words carried the sting of reality, they were not meant to hurt, rather, they were meant to remind Yu Jinhan of the harsh truth he had long been trying to ignore. Despite the reprimand, Yu Jinhan gave him a weak smile. He expressed his gratitude for being allowed to join the raid, even as a low-ranking hunter. Lim simply nodded, acknowledging the sentiment. Then, with a casual stride, he approached the bully who had assaulted Yu Jinhan. Without warning, he smacked the man on the head, ordering him to stop his bullying. Though the bully scowled, he said nothing, unwilling to go against the team leader. As the tension eased, Yu Jinhan discreetly activated his skill, placing Lim Soku under his influence. This ability, though seemingly unremarkable, was the key to his survival. With the group finally gathered, they stepped into the dungeon. The moment they entered, they were met with an immediate threat, a swarm of monstrous bats, creatures that seemed like they had flown straight out of a fantasy game. Their screeching echoed through the dungeon, creating a deafening, disorienting noise. The raid team quickly fell into formation, engaging the creatures with practiced efficiency. Magic and weapons clashed against leathery wings, filling the dark cavern with flashes of light and the sickening crunch of battle. Though victorious, the team remained on edge. They reminded each other to stay vigilant, knowing that monsters could emerge from anywhere at any moment. Meanwhile, as the others claimed magic stones from their fallen foes, Yu Jinhan was relegated to the lowest of duties, mining. Forced to chip away at the cavern walls in search of valuable materials, he was given a grim reality check. A full 80% of whatever he dug up would be taken as commission, leaving him with almost nothing. The same bully from earlier, still eager to exert his dominance, barked orders at Yu Jinhan, demanding that he work faster. If he didn't, the man sneered, he would starve. As Yu Jinhan worked, he briefly entertained the idea of secretly pocketing some of the magic stones. But the thought of getting caught and the severe consequences that would follow made him hesitate. Desperate to distract himself from his miserable situation, he recalled the story of Cinderella, likening himself to the overworked protagonist. His mind drifted back to the day his brother left home, the day his only family abandoned him, while Yu Jinhan had continued to toil away, breaking his back to make a living. His younger brother had been assembling a guild, the World's Edge. In no time at all, that guild grew into the largest and strongest in existence. The gap between the brothers widened to the point where Yu Jinhan could no longer even approach Yu Hyun. Alone, abandoned, and desperate, Yu Jinhan had once wondered if things could have been different had he awakened earlier. This desire led him to spend every last bit of his savings on a broker who claimed he could grant him an awakening. The broker had fed him lies, promising him the rank of an S-class hunter. Yu Jinhan had endured humiliating and degrading trials, clinging to the hope that it would all be worth it. But when the awakening finally came, he was left with nothing but disappointment. He wasn't an S-ranker. He wasn't even a low-tier combatant. He had been classified as an F-ranker, the lowest of the low. The broker, seeing no value in him, discarded him immediately. Just like everyone else had. The world mocked him. The media turned him into a joke. And worst of all, the very brother he had sacrificed everything for called him a disgrace. Upon awakening, every hunter received a title, and the title given to Han Yu Jinhan, the boy who had given up his own future to support another, was the nurturer. Yu Jinhan had spent his entire life supporting his younger brother, devoting every ounce of effort to ensure that Yu Hyun could have the life he never could. But all of that loyalty, all of those sacrifices, were thrown back in his face the moment he awakened. He had once imagined that gaining power, even the smallest fraction of it, would finally bridge the gap between them, that he could finally stand beside his brother as an equal. But reality was cruel. Upon receiving his title, the nurturer, he had expected his brother to at least acknowledge his efforts. Instead, Yu Hyun had ridiculed him, declaring his title an embarrassment. It was not a name that carried weight or strength. It was nothing more than a mockery of his existence, a label that made him a laughingstock in the world of hunters. And as if that wound wasn't deep enough, fate delivered another blow. During a routine dungeon raid, Yu Jinhan suffered an injury that left him permanently handicapped, shattering any hope of proving himself. Desperate and with nowhere else to turn, he had swallowed his pride and approached Yu Hyun, hoping that his immensely powerful younger brother, the world's first S-rank hunter, the legendary guildmaster of the World's Edge, would at least provide him with access to a healer. But once again, he was cast aside. Without so much as a second thought, Yu Hyun rejected him, deeming him useless, assuming he would never be able to enter a dungeon again. That was the moment Yu Jinhan finally accepted the harsh truth. He was nothing more than a parasite, a relic of a past that his brother had already abandoned. Yu Hyun had no need for a weak older brother dragging him down. But what Yu Hyun and everyone else failed to realize was that Yu Jinhan refused to die. Despite being nothing more than an F-rank hunter, despite having no combat skills to call his own, he continued to survive. While stronger hunters perished in dungeons, while those with overwhelming power fell in battle, he endured. It wasn't by luck, nor by sheer willpower, but because of the one skill that had made his awakening unique. His main ability was deceptively simple. He could provide buffs to others, giving them slight enhancements that, to high-ranking hunters, were barely worth noticing. But there was something more to it, something no one truly understood. Whenever he used his skill, he wasn't just supporting those around him, he was binding them to him. With a simple command, cheer up, he could place someone under his influence, linking their existence to his in ways that even he hadn't fully comprehended. His buffs were weak, his presence dismissed, yet somehow, he was always the last one left standing whenever disaster struck. The reason for his survival wasn't mere chance, it was because of his hidden skill, one that came as a part of his nurturer title. This ability, called Final Requital, was what had saved his life countless times. As he stood in the dungeon, forced to mine, while the rest of his team claimed victory and spoils, he felt an unsettling sensation ripple through his body. It was a sensation he had come to recognize all too well, a wave of unnatural energy coursing through him, a pulse of power he had not summoned. His breath hitched as his limbs momentarily trembled, and then he understood. His skill had activated. That could only mean one thing. Someone under his influence had just died. Panic surged through him as he dropped his mining tool, his heart pounding violently against his ribcage. This was just a D-rank dungeon. Nothing about this raid should have triggered Final Requital so soon. Something was very, very wrong. Desperate to understand what had happened, he abandoned his station and ran toward the battle site, the eerie silence of the cavern filling him with dread. And then, as he arrived, his stomach twisted in horror. Blood everywhere. The sight before him was nothing short of a massacre. The very teammates he had been speaking to not long ago were now nothing more than mutilated corpses, their bodies broken, torn apart by something far beyond the threats they were supposed to face. His boss, Lim Soku, lay barely clinging to life, his once proud stature reduced to a battered figure drowning in his own blood. Yu Jinhan's vision blurred with terror as he heard a weak, desperate voice crying out for help. He turned in the direction of the sound, only to freeze in place, his breath caught in his throat, his body refusing to move. A three-headed dragon towered over one of the remaining hunters, its monstrous jaws tearing into him as though he were nothing more than a snack. Yu Jinhan's mind screamed at him to deny the reality before him, but he could not look away. This wasn't an ordinary dungeon monster. This was something that should not be here. The creature before him was none other than Rars, the poison and cursed dragon king, a beast so powerful that it was considered unkillable. Its mere presence was a calamity, a force of destruction so immense that entire nations feared its return. What was a monster of this level doing inside a D-ranked dungeon? Before he could even attempt to process that question, the dragon's multiple heads shifted in his direction, its piercing eyes locking onto him. And then, in an instant, it charged. Fear surged through him, raw and all-consuming. His mind screamed at him to run. Without hesitation, he activated leg strengthening, borrowing the agility skill of his fallen boss, and sprinted toward the nearest ruins in a desperate bid for cover. But before he could even reach them, the dragon's tail came crashing down with earth-shattering force. The ruins exploded into rubble, utterly obliterated. His only hope of hiding was gone. With no time left to think, Yu Jinhan activated body strengthening, pouring everything he had into his arms, praying that he could at least block the next attack. But hope was meaningless against a monster of this caliber. With a single swipe, Rar sent him flying, his body ragdolled like a toy, smashing into the cold dungeon floor. Pain unlike anything he had ever experienced coursed through his broken body. This was it. He was bleeding out, his vision dimming, his consciousness slipping. He was going to die, and then a deafening explosion shook the battlefield. A new presence arrived. Dazed, barely clinging to awareness, Yu Jinhan forced his eyes open, only to find himself looking at someone he never expected to see. Han Yu Hyun, his younger brother, the S-rank hunter. The world's strongest. The one who had abandoned him. Yu Jinhan's lips trembled, disbelief clouding his mind. He couldn't even formulate the question lingering on his tongue. Why? Why had Yu Hyun come to save him? But Yu Hyun didn't answer. His gaze was locked onto the dragon, his stance unwavering. Yu Jinhan, still lying in a pool of his own blood, weakly pleaded for his brother to be cautious, his voice barely above a whisper. This was not an enemy to take lightly. But Yu-hyun didn't respond. He didn't need to. With impossible speed, he activated Blue Willow Leaf, his body moving like a phantom, weaving through the battlefield in a dazzling display of mastery. His sword danced through the air, each movement precise, flawless, as he struck the dragon with inhuman agility. Then, without hesitation, he ignited his blade, covering it in dark purplish flames unlike anything Yu Jin-han had ever seen before. And with one final, ruthless strike, he drove his burning sword straight into one of the dragon's heads. The weight of his brother's lifeless body pressed against him, but the world around Yu Jin-han had already begun to blur. Time felt meaningless in the face of what had just happened. Yu-hyun, the strongest hunter in the world, the untouchable, the one person who had stood above all others, was gone. And it was his fault. The realization dug into him like jagged glass, splintering through every part of his being. The memories of their childhood, the promises they made, the times they clung to each other when they had nothing left, all came flooding back. They had sworn to survive together, to never be alone again. But now, Yu Jin-han was alone. A cold, suffocating rage began to settle deep within him, mingling with the overwhelming sorrow clawing at his chest. His trembling hands placed Yu-hyun's body down gently, as if any harsh movement would shatter what little remained of his fragile world. His pulse pounded in his ears, drowning out the dragon's guttural growl. Final requital had activated. The power that now surged through his veins was unlike anything he had ever felt before. Yu-hyun's overwhelming strength, his untouchable speed, his unbreakable techniques, all of it belonged to him now, doubled in magnitude. His vision sharpened, his body moved with a fluidity that felt foreign, as though his every muscle had been reforged into something far beyond human. He had spent his life as nothing more than an F-ranker, a parasite, a disappointment, forced to crawl in the shadows of hunters who never saw him as their equal. But now he was something else entirely, stronger than the strongest, more powerful than the most powerful. He gripped the spear in his hand, the dark purplish flames enveloping it, as though responding to the fury seething inside of him. The dragon, unfazed by the loss of its opponent, loomed over him once more, its remaining heads poised to attack. But Yu Jin-han did not hesitate. He surged forward, his movements no longer clumsy or weak, but precise, effortless, divine. With one sweeping motion, the spear cut through the air, and the dragon's massive neck fell like dead weight to the ground. The beast barely had time to react before Yu Jin-han struck again, carving through flesh and bone with the ease of slicing paper. This was no longer a battle. This was an execution. The power roaring through his blood felt limitless, overwhelming, and for the first time in his life, he was the one standing above all else. Yet, amidst the carnage, amidst the sheer destruction he unleashed upon the monster that had taken everything from him, his mind was elsewhere. With every strike, every movement, the memories flooded back the realization that Yu-hyun had never truly abandoned him, that he had never stopped caring, that every cold word and every act of distance had been a shield to protect him from a world that sought to use them against each other. Yu-hyun had suffered alone, bearing the weight of power, responsibility, and guilt. Also, Yu Jin-han could live without the burdens of the hunter's world. But now that world belonged to him, and this time he would not be left behind. He would take everything back. The colossal dragon finally collapsed, its massive body hitting the ground with an earth-shattering impact. The dungeon fell silent, save for the crackling remnants of the purplish flames that still flickered in the aftermath of battle. Yu Jin-han stood amidst the wreckage, his chest rising and falling with labored breaths, his spear still clutched tightly in his trembling hands. He had won. He had achieved something no one had ever thought possible. He had slain the poison and cursed Dragon King, Rars. And yet, the weight of victory felt unbearable. His brother's lifeless body still lay where he had gently placed it, untouched by the carnage around them. What was the point of all this power if Yu-hyun wasn't there to see it? The thought crushed him more than any injury he had sustained in battle. He would have given anything at all just to hear his brother's voice one last time. But there was no miracle waiting for him. There was no reward grand enough to undo what had happened. His time was running out. The dragon's poison gas still thickened the air, seeping into his lungs. His body, despite its newfound strength, was still weak in the face of such lethal magic. His vision blurred, his breath grew shallow, and as he waited for his own inevitable demise, a system notification suddenly flashed before his eyes. A robotic voice echoed in his mind, announcing that he had accomplished an impossible feat and earned the legendary title of Dragon Slayer. The rewards followed 10 gate stones, a crimson dragon sword, and a mysterious wishing stone. For a moment, the system's words barely registered. A wish? His tired mind latched onto the idea, his heart racing with the possibility of what that meant. Could he bring Yoo-hyun back? Without hesitation, he willed the stone to grant his wish to resurrect his little brother. But the system coldly denied him, stating that reviving the dead was impossible. The refusal crushed him, but for once, he did not wish for more power. He had spent his whole life being weak, being looked down upon, being an F-ranker, but none of that mattered anymore. The only thing he wanted was his brother. And if he couldn't bring him back, then there was only one thing left to do. Reverse time. Not for power, not for glory, but simply to save Yoo-hyun from ever dying in the first place. He rejected all thoughts of strength, of becoming a mighty hunter, of proving himself. He just wanted to go back. To stop this from ever happening, with unwavering resolve he made his wish, and the moment his eyes closed, the dungeon faded into nothingness. When he reopened them, the world had changed. He found himself sitting on a couch, the familiar scent of expensive leather and polished wood surrounding him. The guild building. His brother's guild building. Disoriented, he reached for his phone and checked the date, his hands shaking as he read the screen. 5 years in the past. 5 entire years before Yoo-hyun's death. His heart pounded violently in his chest as memories rushed back. This was the day he had gone to the awakening broker. The day he had been deceived into believing he would become an S-ranker. The day everything had started to go wrong. And now, somehow, he was here again. Before he could fully process what was happening, the door swung open and Yoo-hyun stepped inside. Yoo Jin-han's breath caught in his throat. He was alive. His younger brother was standing before him, healthy, strong, and very much alive. His emotions overflowed, and before he could think, tears streamed down his face as he rushed forward, wrapping his arms around his brother. Yoo-hyun stiffened at the unexpected embrace, confusion flickering in his gaze as he scolded Yoo Jin-han for engaging in reckless activities. But none of that mattered. Nothing mattered except the fact that his little brother was here. Relief washed over him in waves so overwhelming that he could barely form words. He apologized again and again, not for any specific mistake, but for everything, for feeling like a failure, for not understanding sooner, for not being able to protect the bond they had once shared. Yoo-hyun, though bewildered, softened at the raw sincerity in his older brother's voice. They had never spoken like this before, never truly acknowledged the distance that had formed between them. Yoo Jin-han, no longer bound by pride or hesitation, told him everything that he understood now. That he knew how difficult it had been for Yoo-hyun, how heavy the burden of managing dungeons and guilds had become. He swore that this time he wouldn't be a burden. And as Yoo-hyun hugged him back, murmuring quiet words of gratitude, Yoo Jin-han felt something he hadn't in a long, long time. Peace. For the first time since becoming a hunter, he felt genuinely happy. His brother was here, safe, and they were going to have dinner together. The very same day they had fought before, they were now sitting together, laughing and simply enjoying each other's company. But just as he let himself believe that this quiet life was enough, a system notification rang in his ears. It wasn't over. He had awakened. But this time, he didn't receive just one title, he received 2, the Perfect Nurturer and the Dragon Slayer. His abilities had changed. He had changed. And when he checked his skills, he discovered something new, a special skill called My Kid is the Best, which drastically increased Yoo-hyun's growth speed. He laughed, the irony not lost on him. Even in this life, his skills were built to support his younger brother. But this time, it didn't feel like an insult. It felt like a gift. As Yoo-hyun moved to prepare dinner, Yoo Jin-han reflected on the moment. He had done it. He had saved his brother, and that was all that mattered. Yet, curiosity gnawed at him. Was he stronger now? Had his return to the past altered his rank? With an eager heart, he opened his status window, expecting to see something different, an S rank, maybe even an L rank. But the moment his eyes landed on his stats, his hope shattered. F rank. Still. Frustration flared inside him, but it was quickly replaced by amusement. Of course. Even after all this, even after defeating the Dragon King, he was still an F-ranker. Shaking his head in disbelief, he moved on to check his other abilities, skimming past the unchanged numbers until he reached his Nurturer title. His breath hitched. It had been upgraded. L rank. A rank beyond S, beyond anything he had ever heard of. His fingers trembled as he touched the title, and the moment he did, 4 new skills unlocked before his eyes. Something had changed. Maybe not his rank, maybe not the strength of his body, but something had changed. And this time, he would not waste it. Yoo Jin-han stared at the newly unlocked skills, his excitement momentarily dampened by the realization that final gratitude, his old hidden skill, remained unchanged. He had hoped never to rely on it again, knowing that its activation meant someone under his influence would have to die. However, as his eyes moved past it, he was met with a series of skills that had the most ridiculous names he had ever seen. He groaned as he examined the first of them. My kid is the best. At first glance, it seemed similar to its previous version, but as he read further, he realized that instead of merely increasing Yoo-hyun's growth speed by a certain percentage, it now doubled the growth rate of anyone under its influence. His second new skill, my kid is so great, took things to an even stranger level. It enhanced the stats of the person under his influence based on how many people he praised them in front of. The implications made him laugh, then pause in deep thought. At first, he had hoped that he had become the strongest, but now? He was determined to make his brother and the hunters in his guild the best in the world. If he couldn't be an S-rank combatant, then he would become the ultimate support, nurturing an army of unstoppable hunters. He imagined himself living a wealthy and luxurious life, not as a fighter, but as the nurturer of the strongest guild in the world, basking in riches while guiding his hunters to unparalleled greatness. However, his daydreams came to a screeching halt when his eyes landed on the keyword of activation for his skill. The moment he read the words "I love you," a deep, overwhelming embarrassment flooded his entire being. His hand instinctively smacked against his forehead, and he slammed his head against the table in frustration. What kind of absurd activation phrase was this? He imagined himself in a dungeon, casually shouting "I love you" to his entire team just to buff them, and the horrifying image of himself getting arrested for harassment flashed through his mind. Who in their right mind would take him seriously if he had to say something so sentimental just to activate his skills? With a heavy sigh, he turned his attention to his final skill, promising growth. Compared to the others, this one had more practical applications. It allowed him to assess the expected awakening rank of the unawakened, ensuring that those under his influence would awaken with their full potential. This ability, if used wisely, could shape the future of the hunter world. He could change lives. The thought sent a thrill down his spine, perhaps, just maybe. His new path as a nurturer held more promise than he initially thought. Just as he was about to lose himself in the possibilities, Yoo-hyun placed a steaming plate of food in front of him, breaking his train of thought. Yoo-jin-han thanked him sincerely, complimenting the meal, and his younger brother, pleased with the praise, told him to ask for more if he wanted. Curious, Yoo-jin-han asked how Yoo-hyun had managed to become such an exceptional cook, despite his overwhelming schedule as a hunter. Yoo-hyun explained that he had developed these skills out of necessity while trying to survive in his early days. Back then, cooking his own meals was the safest option. He had no detoxification skills, no antidote items, and the risk of poisoned food was always present. He recounted how, during that time, he had been working solo and had declared his intention to form his own guild, a decision that led to many powerful individuals opposing him. Hearing this, Yoo-jin-han's heart twisted with guilt. He had never known. He had never been told how much his brother had endured alone. Without thinking, he reached across the table, grabbed Yoo-hyun's face, and squished it between his hands as if scolding him for his recklessness. His younger brother blinked at him in surprise, his usual composed demeanor faltering for a brief moment. With a sad expression, Yoo-hyun admitted that he had his reasons for keeping things hidden, that he had watched over Yoo-jin-han from afar, ensuring that he wouldn't get caught in the crossfire of the conflict surrounding him. Even though it meant damaging their relationship, he had kept his distance on purpose to prevent others from using Yoo-jin-han as leverage against him. Yoo-jin-han expressed his frustration at having been left in the dark, but Yoo-hyun countered that he had never wanted to burden him with that knowledge. He had believed Yoo-jin-han wouldn't understand back then. However, now he knew he was wrong. With quiet sincerity, Yoo-hyun admitted his mistake and told Yoo-jin-han that he loved him. He thanked him for understanding, for standing by him despite everything. Yoo-jin-han felt his face heat up, overwhelmed by the sudden surge of emotions. It was all worth it. Every second, every struggle, every decision that had led him to reverse time, it had been the best choice he had ever made. The past no longer weighed on him like a chain. This was his second chance, and he would cherish every moment of it. However, before the night could settle into peace, Yoo-hyun suddenly remembered some unfinished chores and stood up to leave. But before stepping out, he turned back with a stern expression and instructed Yoo-jin-han to delete the Awakening Broker's contact from his phone. Yoo-hyun double-checked to make sure it was gone, clearly determined to keep Yoo-jin-han far away from that part of his past. Yoo-jin-han waved him off, laughing, promising that he wouldn't be stupid enough to get scammed again. But just as he was about to leave the house himself, Yoo-hyun leaned against the doorframe and dropped a bombshell. He could no longer leave. Yoo-jin-han, confused, asked for clarification. What did he mean he couldn't leave? His brother simply explained that it was dangerous for him now. By getting closer to Yoo-hyun, he had inadvertently placed himself back into the world of politics, power, and enemies. More people would be watching him, targeting him. The logical decision? He had to live under Yoo-hyun's protection. Yoo Jin-han tried to argue that he had been perfectly fine living on his own, but Yoo Hyun countered effortlessly, stating that the situation had changed. Before Yoo Jin-han could fully process this shocking revelation, a moving department worker suddenly arrived at the door, asking for his signature. Yoo Jin-han's heart sank with horror. His brother, without asking, had already moved all of his belongings into the guild residence. His apartment? Empty. His independence? Gone. His eyes darted toward Yoo Hyun, demanding an explanation. His brother's answer was infuriatingly simple. Since Yoo Jin-han had already apologized and expressed his love for him, Yoo Hyun considered that a verbal agreement to move in. Yoo Jin-han collapsed onto the floor in sheer frustration. Had this been a side effect of reversing time? He had fought against monsters, betrayal, death, and fate itself. Yet somehow, his biggest opponent was his younger brother, forcing him to live under his care. But then, he remembered. He had no time to waste. The world had changed, and now, he had to change with it. The hero who creates heroes had just begun his new life. Yoo Jin-han hastily packed his most essential belongings, stuffing a few spare clothes, his phone, and some emergency cash into a small bag. He needed to escape before Yoo Hyun returned. His younger brother was getting out of control, hiring guards, restricting his freedom, and treating him like some kind of precious, fragile pet instead of a grown man. He refused to spend the next few years locked away in a gilded cage, no matter how well-intentioned Yoo Hyun's actions were. Silently, he crept toward the door, moving with the caution of a thief, his heart pounding with anticipation. Just a few more steps and he would be free. But the moment he pulled the door open, his escape was immediately thwarted. Standing in the doorway was a mountain of a man, his massive arms crossed over his chest, a thick aura of intimidation radiating from him like an impenetrable wall. Yoo Jin-han instantly recognized him, Kim Sang-gan, an A-rank hunter and the strongest defense user in Yoo Hyun's guild. His jaw clenched in frustration. Of course, his brother had anticipated this. Annoyance flickered in Yoo Jin-han's expression as he realized Yoo Hyun had assigned an A-rank bodyguard just to keep him inside. It was ridiculous. He was an F-ranker, a nobody, not some national treasure that required top-tier protection. He tried to reason with Kim, explaining that he just wanted to go for a short walk and would return soon, but the big man's expression darkened. Kim did not like to be negotiated with. His towering presence made the room feel smaller, his cold gaze unwavering. Yoo Jin-han swallowed hard, realizing that no amount of persuasion was going to work on this guy. Kim wasn't just a wall, he was a fortress. The sheer pressure of his aura bore down on Yoo Jin-han, making it difficult to breathe. But just as the overwhelming force nearly sent him collapsing to his knees, something unexpected happened. His newly acquired fear resistance activated. The crushing weight of Kim's presence vanished in an instant, his mind clearing as if someone had flicked a switch. His perception of Kim shifted completely. The monstrous bodyguard, once an imposing force of nature, suddenly appeared harmless, almost docile, like a big, fluffy bear. Emboldened by this new perspective, Yoo Jin-han straightened his back, staring Kim down with newfound confidence. He coolly stated that confining someone against their will was illegal, and warned Kim that he could be sent to jail for such an act. Kim, unamused, didn't even blink. Instead, he grabbed Yoo Jin-han by the collar, lifted him off the ground like he was nothing more than a sack of rice, and growled a very clear message. Did he need a beating to understand his situation? Yoo Jin-han's bravado shattered instantly. His skills were useless. He was still an F-rank weakling, no matter how much knowledge or confidence he had gained from his second chance at life. With zero effort, Kim tossed him back into the room, slamming the door shut behind him. Yoo Jin-han groaned in frustration, rubbing his sore back as he scrolled through his skills in desperation. There had to be something he could use. Just then, his promising growth skill activated on its own, and a small notification appeared. Kim Sang-gan had the potential to awaken as an S-ranker. Yoo Jin-han's mind spun with possibilities. 2 S-rankers in World's Edge. If he could awaken Kim, he would have 2 near-invincible guards protecting him. It was the perfect way to ensure his freedom. But first, he needed to place Kim under his influence. He hesitated for a moment, then grimaced at the reality of his activation keyword. I love you. A shudder ran down his spine. This was going to be humiliating. Steeling himself, he forced the words out, making heart-shaped gestures with his hands for added effect. But instead of charming Kim, the A-rank warrior recoiled in absolute disgust. Before Yoo Jin-han could even blink, Kim threw him back inside with even more force than before. Defeated, he collapsed onto the floor, groaning in frustration, internally begging the system to let him change his keyword before he lost his sanity. As the day passed and night fell, Yoo Hyun finally returned from work, only to find his older brother sprawled face down on the floor, unmoving. Concern flickered in his expression as he gently picked him up onto his lap, checking to see if he was all right. He asked if Yu Jinhan was adjusting well to his new home, but his brother's expression of pure defeat made it clear that he was struggling. Sensing this, Yu Hyun tried to lift his spirits, promising that he would let him go soon, but only after their guild grew strong enough to eliminate all potential threats. The problem was that this would take years, at least 3 years. 3 years of being locked away. Yu Jinhan's mind spiraled at the thought. He envisioned himself being taken for walks like a dog, escorted by elite guards everywhere he went. His face paled, his body slumping further into Yu Hyun's lap as if his soul had already left his body. But then, an idea struck him. Before returning to the past, he had spent years researching hunters. He knew exactly who had the potential to awaken as high rankers. If he could track them down and influence them before they awakened, he could secure them as his personal bodyguards. In his mind, he envisioned an army of elite hunters, all under his control, all fiercely loyal to him. A mafia leader, surrounded by superheroes. The sheer power he could wield without ever having to fight himself sent a thrill of excitement through him. This was it. This was his path to freedom. Without hesitation, he dramatically knelt before Yu Hyun, passionately declaring that he would find an A-rank hunter himself. Yu Hyun looked at him with a mixture of suspicion and confusion. He questioned how exactly Yu Jinhan planned to find an A-ranker. More importantly, was he even awakened? And if he was, did he possess a skill that could help him locate high-ranking hunters or influence their awakening? Yu Jinhan felt a wave of panic. If Yu Hyun found out about his L-rank skill, he might never let him leave again. He imagined himself imprisoned for eternity, locked away by his overly cautious younger brother. To avoid suspicion, he fed Yu Hyun a carefully constructed half-truth. He admitted that he was still just an F-ranker, but claimed that his ability only allowed him to assist one person per month. Yu Hyun took a moment to consider this information. It was reasonable enough. An F-rank awakening someone once a month wasn't a big deal. The real danger lay in the fact that awakening centers were soon to be established, making such skills obsolete. If awakening became widely accessible, then Yu Jinhan's ability wouldn't even matter. Yu Hyun accepted his reasoning, nodding in understanding before casually dropping another bombshell. An awakening center was already being built. Yu Jinhan froze. His carefully constructed plan was already in jeopardy before it even started. If the world no longer needed awakening specialists, his secret weapon would be useless. He had to act fast. Time was against him, and his brother's patience was already wearing thin. He needed to build his army before the system replaced him entirely. His mission had just become urgent. Yu Jinhan, eager to solidify his freedom, assured Yu Hyun that he had absolutely nothing to worry about. He recalled that an awakening center had already been operational before he reversed time, meaning his ability would eventually become obsolete anyway. Using this knowledge, he confidently declared his skill to be useless, hoping that his younger brother would drop the matter entirely. Yu Hyun, ever cautious, reminded him to remain vigilant, emphasizing that it wouldn't be an easy task to navigate the hunter world. But Yu Jinhan hardly listened. The moment he realized that his plan had worked, he practically jumped for joy like an overexcited child. He had done it. He had outwitted the greatest S-ranker in the world. Overcome with pride and self-satisfaction, he began bragging about his cunningness, even going so far as to envision himself as a more prominent guild leader than Yu Hyun himself. He could already see a future where he was the real mastermind, orchestrating powerful hunters from behind the scenes, while his little brother handled all the manual labor. For the first time since returning to the past, he felt a true sense of victory. The next day, Kim Sang-gan, his ever-watchful A-rank babysitter, escorted him to the Korean Hunter Association for his official registration as an awakener. The moment they arrived, the atmosphere was electric. The presence of Kim, World's Edge's shield, stirred excitement among the crowd. Everyone whispered in awe, eyes wide with admiration. Naturally, seeing Yu Jinhan walking beside such a formidable hunter, speculation ran wild. Was he an elite recruit? A new A-rank prodigy? Perhaps even a secret weapon of the guild? The excitement was short-lived. The moment they discovered he was merely an F-rank, the disappointment in their faces was almost painful. Whispers of just an F-ranker? And what a waste filled the air. Yu Jinhan, used to such reactions, brushed it off with ease. He had bigger things to worry about, like what he would do with the absurdly large budget his brother had provided. When he checked the account balance, his soul nearly left his body. The number had 9 zeros. 9. He was carrying more money than he had ever seen in his entire life. At that moment, he seriously considered abandoning all plans and simply living the rest of his life in luxury. After his registration, he visited the Hunter shopping mall, where he was met with unexpectedly warm hospitality. Of course, this had nothing to do with him and everything to do with Kim's presence. Salespeople swarmed them, showcasing an overwhelming variety of weapons, armor, and magical accessories. The sheer volume of choices made Yu Jinhan dizzy. In the end, he opted for simplicity. Among the vast collection of extravagant items, a pair of plain black fairy earrings caught his eye. They were nothing flashy, but they were practical. He purchased them immediately, adding a pair of leather gloves and a light fabric belt to further enhance his stats. Once he equipped them, he checked his updated status window and was pleased to find that his current stats were comparable to those of a C-rank hunter. Not bad for an F-ranker. Satisfied with his purchases, he made one last stop to buy some contracts and potions before heading back to the car. Kim, who had been waiting by the vehicle, greeted him with a scowl of irritation. He demanded to know where Yu Jinhan had disappeared to. Our F-rank hero, already frustrated with his lack of freedom, snapped back that he had simply gone shopping. Kim, still unimpressed, warned him to inform him of his whereabouts beforehand, as it was his duty to keep an eye on him. The big guy then asked if they were heading home. But Yu Jinhan had one more destination in mind. He had come to this area for a reason. He remembered that Park Yim, the future Ice Witch, lived nearby, along with her guardian, her uncle, who owned a barbecue shop. If his memories were correct, she would still be a middle schooler. This was his chance to recruit her before anyone else. Determined, he dragged Kim to the food market, hopping from one barbecue restaurant to another, searching for any sign of her. As he searched, the scent of sizzling meat became too tempting to ignore. He treated himself to a piece of barbecued beef, savoring the juicy flavors, and even asked Kim if he wanted something. The big guy flatly refused. Kim, ever practical, questioned why they were wasting time in a place like this when they could get far better barbecue at World's Edge's private dining hall. But Yu Jinhan excused himself, claiming that something about the local cuisine made it irresistible. In reality, he was stalling, waiting for Park Yi-rim to appear. Just as he took another bite, a loud commotion erupted nearby. A young girl burst out of a restaurant, her voice sharp with frustration. She was being scolded by her uncle for something she didn't even do. Tears welled up in her eyes as she shouted back in protest before turning on her heels and running away. The moment Yu Jinhan laid eyes on her, recognition struck like lightning. This was her, Park Yim, the future Ice Witch. Without hesitation, he shoved the rest of his food into Kim's hands and bolted after her. Using the enhanced speed from his B-ranked belt, he maneuvered through the crowd like a gust of wind, his voice carrying over the bustling market as he called out for her to stop. The girl, mistaking him for someone sent by her uncle, shouted that she wasn't going back. With a defiant glare, she called him a juicy slang term for a middle-aged man. Yu Jinhan nearly tripped over himself. Middle-aged? The comment stabbed at his pride, but before he could correct her misunderstanding, his gaze flickered to something far more urgent. A speeding car, heading straight for her. In a heartbeat, he launched himself forward, leaping without hesitation. He grabbed Park Yim, yanking her away from the path of certain death just in time. The car sped past, barely missing them. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the girl, now sitting on top of him, asked if he was okay. Yu Jinhan, feeling the weight pressing down on his ribs, groaned that she should get off him first. Once they recovered, he took her to a barbecue stall, hoping to finally have a proper conversation. He encouraged her to eat as much as she wanted, and as he had suspected, she devoured the food like she hadn't eaten in days. Good thing he brought Yu Hyun's corporate card. As she stuffed her face with solid pepper-coated meat, he casually asked about her uncle, wondering if she would be more open to negotiations if she was unhappy with her current situation. She immediately dismissed the idea of returning home, stating that the food there was terrible and warned him not to waste his money eating there. Yu Jinhan barely held back a laugh. It seemed she had strong opinions on food. Then, without pausing her relentless eating, she finally looked up at him, her sharp eyes filled with suspicion. She was no fool, she knew who he was, and she knew that someone like him, the older brother of the world's most powerful hunter, wouldn't seek out a nobody like her without a reason. Yu Jinhan smiled, leaning forward slightly, ready to make his move. This was the first step. He had found her. Now, all he had to do was convince her to join him. Yu Jinhan, feeling the pressure of Yim's sharp gaze, wiped a bit of sweat from his forehead. He scrambled for an excuse and blurted out the first thing that came to mind, that he simply sensed good vibes from her. The girl was not convinced. Instead, she immediately assumed he was part of some shady, dark cult trying to recruit her. With a skeptical look, she flatly rejected him, thanked him for the food, and turned to leave. Realizing that he was losing his chance, our F-ranker's survival instincts kicked in. Thinking quickly, he concocted a completely ridiculous sob story about how her parents had once helped him in his darkest hour, and now, he felt eternally indebted to them. To his surprise, Yerim actually paused. She admitted that she had been betrayed so many times that it was hard to believe anyone truly wanted to help her. Yujin Han seized the opportunity. Now that she was listening, he finally got to the real reason for this whole meeting. He revealed his ability, his power to help others awaken. He assured her that she would awaken as at least a B ranker, possibly even higher. With the full backing of World's Edge, he promised to support her in becoming an established hunter. Extending his hand, he invited her into a formal contract, offering to be her sponsor. The moment he pulled a contract from his inventory, Yim's entire demeanor changed. Her eyes widened, completely ignoring the contract itself. Instead, she excitedly pointed at his hand and asked if that was really an inventory. She demanded to know how he had one when he was just an F ranker. Yujin Han calmly explained that upon awakening, she would receive one as well. He handed her the contract and encouraged her to read it carefully before signing. The deal was simple. She would keep his skill a secret and act as his personal bodyguard for 1 year. Our ever-humble F-ranker openly admitted how weak he was, much to Yim's amusement. She mocked him outright, laughing at how ridiculous it was that a middle schooler would have to protect a grown man. Yujin Han, unfazed, simply shrugged. He reasoned that once she awakened, she would be far stronger than him anyway, so there was nothing to be embarrassed about. But then, for the first time, her expression faltered. A hint of sadness flashed across her face as she hesitated, asking if awakening meant she would finally be independent. Yujin Han nodded firmly, assuring her that all hunters were treated equally, regardless of their past. That answer was all she needed. She grabbed the pen, ready to sign the contract on the spot. But just as she was about to, Yujin Han yanked the pen from her hand and scolded her. He demanded to know why she was about to sign without even reading the fine print. Did she have any idea how dangerous it was to sign a contract blindly? What if someone exploited her? Frustrated, he walked her through the details, making sure the terms were fair and beneficial for her as well. However, there was one problem. Since she was still underage, she would need a guardian's approval. Yim instantly became tense. Her fingers clenched around the paper, and anger flickered in her eyes. She gritted her teeth, muttering that her so-called guardian was the very person exploiting her. Just as Yujin Han was about to ask for clarification, a sharp voice interrupted them. Her uncle had arrived. The man stormed toward them, shouting angrily at Yerim for disappearing without permission. Yujin Han, determined to handle the situation peacefully, stepped forward, but his words were ignored. The old man immediately grabbed Yim's arm, forcing her to go back with him. Yujin Han didn't hesitate. He grabbed the uncle's arm in return, his grip strengthened by his items, causing the man to wince in pain. For the first time, the uncle actually looked at him, finally realizing that this wasn't just some random meddler. He narrowed his eyes and asked if Yujin Han was in a relationship with his niece. Yujin Han's face twitched. What kind of question was that? His frustration only grew as he glanced at Yim's worn-out clothes and tattered shoes. The sight made his blood boil. He turned to her uncle with cold, unwavering determination and flatly stated that Yerim was better off without a guardian like him. Yim, feeling truly supported for the first time, finally snapped. She let all of her bottled-up frustrations spill out. She loudly revealed that her uncle had stolen every last cent of her parents' inheritance and had given her nothing. The commotion drew the attention of the crowd. People started to whisper, and before long they openly argued that this was outright abuse. The public was turning against him. The uncle, infuriated by the accusations, roughly pushed Yujin Han aside. But Yujin Han, ever the cunning strategist, saw an opportunity. With a dramatic flair, he threw himself to the ground, rolling around in exaggerated pain. He clutched his chest as if he had just been mortally wounded, crying out that the big bad uncle had assaulted him for no reason. The man, caught off guard, tried to defend himself. But Yujin Han, fully committed to his act, let tears well up in his eyes, claiming that he was just trying to protect poor Yerim from her cruel uncle. The crowd immediately turned hostile toward the man, fueled by their collective sense of justice. Seeing that the situation was spiraling out of his control, the uncle lunged forward, grabbing Yujin Han by the collar. But in a sly, perfectly executed counter, Yujin Han subtly shifted his weight, knocking the old man off balance. What followed was a masterpiece of humiliation. The uncle stumbled backward, his foot landing on a spilled soda bottle. His body slipped comically, sending him flailing through the air before crashing face first into a pile of kimchi. The spicy red paste covered his nose and mouth, causing a fiery sting that had him screaming in agony. Yujin Han, grinning with satisfaction, watched as his masterpiece of revenge unfolded. But before he could fully enjoy the moment, a loud thud interrupted everything. He and Yerim whipped their heads around, trying to figure out where the noise had come from. Then Kim Sang-un appeared, his imposing figure towering over them. His expression was unreadable, but his voice carried a heavy warning. Something was wrong. The city was drowning in chaos, its once bustling streets now filled with the deafening sounds of destruction, the piercing screams of civilians desperately seeking shelter, and the unrelenting screech of emergency sirens that barely masked the guttural, otherworldly noises emanating from the monstrous entity that had emerged from the shattered dungeon. The air was thick with smoke, dust, and the metallic scent of blood, mingling with the foul, rotting stench that clung to the grotesque, writhing mass of tentacles and fused bodies. An amalgamation of countless creatures twisted together into a single, horrifying existence. The way it moved, shifting unnaturally between a pulsating, slithering form and a monstrous, coordinated swarm, sent shivers through even the most battle-hardened hunters. This was no ordinary dungeon break, no simple monster gone rogue. This was something entirely different, something wrong. Kim Sang-gun, his years of combat experience honed to perfection, wasted no time in taking action as his instincts screamed at him to secure the area and protect those in immediate danger. His role as a defensive powerhouse kicking in almost automatically as he slammed his hands together, summoning the full power of his Tetra Shield skill. The ground trembled as an enormous, gleaming wall of pure magical energy erupted from the pavement, stretching high into the sky and imposing, seemingly impenetrable barrier that now stood between the monster and the people scrambling for safety behind it. For a brief moment, as the shimmering golden light of the shield radiated across the battlefield, there was a flicker of hope, a fleeting sense that perhaps the monster could be contained, that perhaps this fight could be won with the least amount of casualties possible. But that hope was violently shattered the moment the writhing horror lurched forward, its massive appendages slamming into the Tetra Shield with a force that sent deep, splintering cracks racing through the magical barrier, fractures spreading like a spiderweb before anyone had time to react. Kim had barely launched himself into the air when the shield, once thought unbreakable, shattered with an ear-splitting crack that sent fragments of magical energy cascading like falling glass. The defensive line obliterated in an instant as the full, horrifying scope of the creature's true nature revealed itself. This was no single entity, no beast that could be taken down with brute force alone. Instead, what Kim had struck was merely one of the many, many connected bodies that made up the horrifying swarm. Yu Jin-han, his breath coming in short, uneven gasps, his mind scrambling to piece together something, anything that could explain why this was happening, why this event was unfolding when it had never occurred in his past life, found himself frozen for just a second too long. His thoughts drowned out by the monstrous chittering and squelching noises of the creature rapidly advancing upon them. There was no time to think, only time to run. Yu Jin-han barely registered the way his heart pounded violently against his ribs as he reached for Yim, grabbing her wrist with a firm, almost bruising grip as he yanked her forward, his entire focus narrowing to just getting her to safety before it was too late. But fate, as always, had its cruel way of intervening, because no sooner had he pulled her forward did he feel the weight of her body suddenly drop, his momentum halting as he turned back to find that her worn-out shoes, barely holding together at this point, had finally given out, sending her crashing onto the pavement with a startled gasp, her small frame momentarily paralyzed in place as she looked up, wide-eyed, to see the monstrous appendage descending toward her, closing in with terrifying speed, a grotesque fleshy limb that promised only one thing: death. But then, in a flash of pure instinct, Kim was there, his towering frame moving faster than anyone could process, his massive hand outstretched as another shield materialized in the air, the defensive magic absorbing the impact of the monster's attack just seconds before it could reach him. The force of it sent shock waves through the battlefield, rattling windows, shaking the ground beneath them, but the block had bought them precious seconds, seconds that Yu Jin-han refused to waste. Ignoring the burn in his muscles, the terror clawing at the back of his mind, he hauled Yurim to her feet and took off running once more, her hands still clutched tightly in his own as they raced toward the shelter. Yet even as they neared safety, even as the reinforced steel doors loomed ahead, promising some semblance of protection, Yu Jin-han could feel something off about Yim's silence. Her lack of resistance not stemming from relief but from something else, something that felt dangerously close to frustration. By the time they reached the shelter, the moment they were inside, Yu Jin-han was already turning back, already preparing to return to the battlefield, because this wasn't something he could ignore, wasn't something he could trust someone else to deal with, especially not when he knew exactly how colony-type monsters worked, how they wouldn't fall unless every last body within them was destroyed simultaneously. Kim was strong, there was no doubt about that, but he was purely a defensive tank. He could hold the monster off, but he couldn't eliminate it, which meant if Yu Jin-han didn't do something, this fight would never end. But just as he was about to leave, a hand latched onto his arm, gripping him with surprising force. Yim, her face still pale, her breath still uneven from the run, looked up at him with a fire in her eyes that sent a strange heavy sensation curling in his chest as she begged him no, demanded that he awaken her. The words sent a cold shock through him, his entire body momentarily freezing in place as her voice rang in his ears, raw, desperate, filled with a fierce resolve that he hadn't expected. But still, he hesitated. She hadn't even signed the contract yet. She was just a kid. But as he met her gaze, he realized something. This wasn't fear driving her. It wasn't panic or some reckless attempt to throw herself into a battle she wasn't ready for. This was something deeper, something stronger. She wasn't asking for power because she was afraid of dying. She was asking because she was tired of being powerless, and yet Yu Jin-han still refused. He had seen too many people die thinking that awakening would solve all their problems, that gaining power would make them invincible, that the second they crossed the threshold into hunterhood, they would be safe. But it wasn't true. It had never been true. Not everyone became an S-ranker. Not everyone survived, and he refused to watch another person die because of it. So he turned away. He left her standing there, speechless, as he stepped back out into the battlefield, his mind already shifting to strategy, already calculating the next move, unaware that the very decision he had just made was about to be shattered. Because minutes later, as the tentacle monster closed in once again, as they found themselves trapped, with no escape, Yu Jin-han, out of sheer desperation, did the one thing he swore he wouldn't do. He grabbed Yim's wrist, and in that instant, a blinding blue light erupted, illuminating the entire city. A notification flashed in his mind, the words burning themselves into his consciousness as he read them. Hunter Awakening Ranks' Park Yi-rim codename, Frosty Sight, and just like that, everything changed. As the ice shards settled and the battlefield grew eerily silent, Yu Jin-han, despite the chaotic situation, couldn't help but marvel at the sight of Park Yi-rim standing amidst the frozen wreckage. Her expression bright with excitement as she admired the results of her first ever awakening. It was strange she had always been known as the Ice Witch, an S-rank hunter feared for her ruthless, overwhelming strength. Yet in this moment, there was nothing cold or distant about her. She was smiling, genuinely, purely, with a kind of joy that even the calamity surrounding them couldn't diminish. However, before he could let himself bask in that moment, the reality of the situation snapped back into place, as the frozen tendrils of the tentacle monster still twitched, its grotesque form struggling against its sudden entrapment. The thing wasn't dead yet. With the entire colony still pulsing, trying to reassemble itself, Yu Jin-han couldn't help but wish she had an even wider area attack to wipe them all out at once. That thought had barely formed in his mind when, as if in answer, a deep, familiar voice cut through the icy battlefield. From above, a flickering violet flame illuminated the sky, casting long shadows against the frozen ruin. A second later, a torrential blaze descended like a meteor, consuming the creature in an all-devouring inferno. The frozen tentacles shattered like brittle glass as the flames surged, reducing the monster to ash in a single devastating sweep. The sheer force of the explosion sent heat waves rolling through the air, and Yu Jin-han had barely managed to brace himself before the shockwave sent a ringing pressure through his ears. The attack had been so overwhelmingly destructive that, for a moment, it felt as if the entire city had been set ablaze. Park Yim, who had just barely caught her breath from her first real battle, now stood frozen in place, eyes wide, her body stiff with shock. Yu Jin-han, still sitting on the ground where he had collapsed in sheer exhaustion, didn't need to turn around to know who had arrived. He felt the presence before he even saw him. Han Yu-hyun, his monstrously overpowered younger brother, had finally appeared. Relief flooded his system, only for it to be ruthlessly yanked away a second later, as a powerful hand grabbed him by the collar and began throttling him. "You absolute moron," Yu-hyun growled, shaking his older brother with barely restrained fury, his violet flames flickering dangerously close to Yu Jin-han's face. This exactly is why I locked you up in the first place." As if on cue, Kim Sang-un finally arrived at the scene, looking relieved but thoroughly unimpressed with the entire situation, while Park Yi-rim wisely stepped back, realizing that it might be best not to interfere in what was clearly a sibling argument that had been years in the making. Still gasping for breath, as he was forcibly rattled around, Yu Jin-han managed to choke out a half-hearted, "Oh, come on, you act like I planned this." It was probably not the best response, given that Yu-hyun only tightened his grip. When Yu-hyun finally let him go, shoving him back onto the ground with a glare that could incinerate lesser men, Yu Jin-han took the opportunity to push himself up, dusting off his coat with exaggerated nonchalance before dramatically throwing his arm around Yim's shoulder, grinning like he had just struck gold. "Anyway, before I forget, meet my new S-rank guildmate." Yu-hyun blinked. The sheer absurdity of that sentence seemed to momentarily short-circuit his brain. What? Brimming with pride, Yu Jin-han puffed out his chest and declared that he had successfully recruited an S-rank hunter as his personal bodyguard. He practically radiated smugness, like he had single-handedly solved the world's biggest problem, while Yu Hyun only looked increasingly disturbed. Before he could recover, Yu Jin-han pressed forward, proudly introducing Park Ye-rim as his newest team member, only for his younger brother to immediately question whether her parents had even agreed to this. At this, Yu Jin-han paused, scratching his chin, as he considered how to explain the incredibly complicated situation. Instead of coming up with a reasonable solution, he snapped his fingers like he had just discovered the most brilliant idea in existence and said, "No problem, I'll just become her guardian." Silence. Yu Hyun looked at him as if he had suggested adopting a dragon. Before Yu Jin-han could bask in his own genius, Kim Sang-gun, ever the responsible adult in the room, cleared his throat and patiently explained that becoming a sponsor might be a better option, given that a legal guardian had full authority over a minor's private life and financial contracts, which meant they could protect them from exploitative situations, something a mere sponsor could not. Hearing this, Ye-rim looked at Yu Jin-han, her expression conflicted, and quietly told him that he didn't have to go so far for her. But despite Yu Hyun's growing exasperation, Yu Jin-han merely reminded her about her abusive uncle and left the decision entirely in her hands. The moment stretched on, heavy with unspoken emotions, until Yu Hyun, never one to leave things alone, suddenly grabbed his older brother by the neck again. With a smirk that suggested he was only half joking, Yu Hyun tilted his head and remarked that he had personally witnessed several minors assault their legally appointed guardians before. His grin widened as he asked, "So, you think you could handle an S-ranker if she decided to start swinging?" Highly offended, Ye-rim scoffed and insisted that she would never do that. However, before she could argue further, Yu Hyun abruptly declared that he would just become her guardian instead. That was immediately shut down. The two S-rankers, one an overpowered prodigy, the other a newly awakened force of nature, began squabbling like children, bickering over who would take responsibility, while Yu Jin-han, still half choking from earlier strangulation, found himself dragged along for the ride. In the middle of this absurd struggle, Ye-rim accidentally gripped his arm too tightly, dislocating his shoulder in the process. For a moment there was only silence. Then, simultaneously, both S-rankers apologized. Waving off their concern, Yu Jin-han let out an exaggerated sigh and went on the offensive, asking if he had raised Yu Hyun to be so disrespectful. He pointed out that his younger brother should be grateful that he had managed to recruit an S-rank hunter all on his own, then added that if Yu Hyun wanted to act like a guildmaster, he should at least start helping poor Mr. Kim handle all the responsibilities. Meanwhile, Park Yim, watching all of this unfold, grumbled about how bossy her new guildmaster seemed to be. Without missing a beat, Yu Jin-han ordered her to sit down obediently. Feeling humbled, she actually apologized before checking on his shoulder, but he waved it off, instead offering her his shoes, noticing how ill-fitting her current ones were. The moment she slipped them on, he realized her uncle hadn't even bothered to get her the right size. Empathetically, he promised they would get her new shoes the next day. The simple gesture left her momentarily stunned, before she jokingly remarked that she felt like a rom-com heroine from television. In the spirit of the role, she attempted to swat a fly off his face only to end up accidentally smacking him in the nose. As Yu Jin-han howled in pain, she awkwardly laughed, calling it an accident, while he grumbled that she was more of a villain than a heroine. Just as the moment turned lighthearted again, a familiar voice cut through the air. Her uncle had arrived, and this time, Yu Jin-han had one last problem to deal with. Deciding to entertain himself, Ye-rim cheerfully informed the old man that she had awakened as an S-ranker and was moving out immediately. The uncle's face twisted in shock, insisting that she was too young. Yu Jin-han, ever prepared, played a recording of the man's abuse, and just like that, the final piece of trash was ready to be taken out. Yu Jin-han, ever the opportunist, leaned in with a sly smile as he subtly hinted that CCTV footage and recorded evidence could easily be used to press charges against Yim's uncle. He let his words hang in the air, watching as the fat man's face twisted with barely contained panic. The two immediately began bickering, the uncle furiously arguing that Yu Jin-han was completely unfit to be her guardian, while Yu Jin-han countered just as smoothly that at least he wasn't an abusive, money-grubbing parasite who treated his own niece like a walking bank account. Their heated exchange escalated as the uncle, losing his cool, slapped at Yu Jin-han's phone and grabbed him by the collar, his pudgy fingers tightening in frustration as he barked something about respecting his authority as a guardian. Before Yu Jin-han could throw out a snarky remark, the argument was abruptly cut short. With a sharp, deafening crack, Yim's umbrella smashed into the pavement, sending tremors through the ground as if announcing its owner's fury. The impact alone was enough to startle everyone around her. The fat uncle, still caught up in his self-righteous tantrum, stiffened instantly, his instincts warning him that something was about to go very, very wrong. He barely had time to react before his niece, his once quiet, obedient, powerless niece, turned to him with the most innocent, wide-eyed expression imaginable. Instead of raising her voice or making threats, she tilted her head slightly, her tone soft, almost pleading, as she sweetly begged him not to resort to violence. The old man, caught completely off guard by the drastic shift in her demeanor, opened his mouth to continue scolding her, but his words immediately died in his throat as he watched her effortlessly snap the solid metal rod of her umbrella clean in half with one hand. Yu Jinhan, despite knowing exactly how strong S-rankers could be, felt his fear-resistance skill activate. For a moment, even he felt a slight chill. The uncle's entire body visibly trembled, his expression shifting from frustration to outright horror as he took a step back, suddenly wondering if the girl in front of him was truly the same niece he had once controlled so easily, or if she had become something else entirely, a monster in human skin. Seeing his fear, Yim, for the first time in her life, finally let loose. All of the anger, the frustration, the helplessness she had felt growing up under his thumb, all of the resentment she had swallowed down over the years, came rushing out in an unstoppable wave. She looked her uncle dead in the eye and made it very clear that she owed him nothing. There was no hesitancy in her voice, no flicker of doubt, only cold, sharp certainty, as she warned him that if he ever dared to try and take advantage of her again, she wouldn't hesitate to crush him like a watermelon. To prove her point, she casually grabbed his shoulder, applying just enough pressure to make the old man's face turn sickly pale, his knees nearly buckling under the sudden force. Then, as if he wasn't even worth the effort, she released him with a look of complete disgust, adding that she was only letting him go because he wasn't even worth wasting energy on. But just before turning away, she delivered one final, spine-chilling threat. If he ever harmed Yu Jinhan in any way, she would make sure that what happened to her umbrella would be a mercy compared to what she'd do to him. With that, the encounter was over. As they left the scene, Yirim hummed cheerfully, turning to Yu Jinhan with a playful smirk as she mimicked his usual smug tone, asking if her evil Yu Jinhan impression was convincing enough. Yu Jinhan, finally freed from dealing with the useless excuse of a guardian, grinned and stretched his arms, basking in his newfound freedom. With an S-rank bodyguard by his side, he could finally start moving around without restrictions. The next morning, however, any illusion of peace was shattered instantly as Yu Hyun came storming into his room, his expression urgent and demanding, leaving Yu Jinhan blinking blearily from under his blankets, wondering what in the world was so important that his younger brother had to wake him up like this. Without wasting a second, Yu Hyun immediately demanded the items Yu Jinhan had bought during his shopping spree. Still groggy, Yu Jinhan stared at him in confusion, wondering what his little brother was even talking about. Wasn't he free to spend the money as he wanted? Had Yu Hyun changed his mind about letting him have financial freedom? His confusion only deepened when Yu Hyun clarified that he specifically wanted the A-rank venom pods. That statement woke Yu Jinhan up instantly. He blinked in genuine surprise, rubbing his face as he tried to figure out how his brother even knew about that purchase. But before he could ask, Yu Hyun, completely out of character, suddenly pulled him into an embrace, gripping him tightly as he muttered something heartfelt under his breath. Still half asleep and completely caught off guard, Yu Jinhan froze. His little brother, the same ridiculously overpowered S-ranker who routinely strangled him whenever he got himself into trouble, was hugging him like a sentimental fool. It was unsettling. Then Yu Hyun, still clinging on to him, murmured a genuine word of thanks. For a brief, shocking moment, it almost felt touching, but then Yu Hyun continued. He thanked Yu Jinhan for being willing to commit suicide if any enemies ever held him hostage. Yu Jinhan jerked back immediately, eyes widening in horror as realization slammed into him like a brick wall. He had completely forgotten that he had an insanely high poison resistance. To his emotional little brother, buying a rank venom pods was basically the equivalent of preparing for a self-sacrificing last resort plan in case anyone ever captured him and tried to use him as a bargaining chip. He could just off himself painlessly instead of being a burden. What? He didn't even know how to begin explaining the situation. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. On the one hand, it wasn't wrong to say that he had planned to use the venom pods to his advantage in combat. On the other hand, it wasn't supposed to be some tragic, noble sacrifice. Yeah, it was better to just let Yu Hyun believe whatever he wanted. So, instead of clarifying, Yu Jinhan simply patted his younger brother's back and told him that he had asked Director Sok to deal with Yim's uncle. Yu Hyun, still half emotional, half suspicious, tilted his head, asking how exactly they had handled it. Yu Jinhan casually explained that, after doing some background research, they discovered that the uncle had already squandered Yim's entire inheritance on his failing business ventures. Since the man was broke, They offered him a deal: they wouldn't press charges or publicly expose him in exchange for him never contacting Yerim again. And of course, to sweeten the deal, they had even bribed him with a little extra cash, knowing full well that greedy people like him would take the money and run. Yoo Hyun, still processing all of this, finally asked why Yerim hadn't wanted to sue him outright. Yoo Jin-han sighed, shaking his head, clarifying that she didn't want justice, she just wanted to be rid of him entirely. At that moment, the conversation was interrupted by a loud crashing sound. The two brothers turned to see a training room completely obliterated, the remains of sparring dummies and shattered pillars scattered across the floor. Before Yoo Jin-han could even question what was happening, a massive pillar collapsed, nearly crushing him. Yoo Hyun smirked. "Still think you can handle an S-ranker?" Yoo Jin-han, watching Yerim land gracefully in the center of the destruction, knew that he had made a very, very dangerous decision. Yim, still exhilarated from her skill tests, finally dropped the last bit of her reveal, and with a chilling, almost nonchalant tone, she introduced what was arguably her most unnerving ability yet pale corpse. Unlike her other skills, which were based on elemental destruction and enhancement, this one was something else entirely. It allowed her to interrogate the dead, drawing forth lingering echoes of consciousness from corpses and extracting their last thoughts, memories, or hidden secrets. It wasn't resurrection, nor was it necromancy. It was something far worse. It was the ability to pry into the lingering, unwilling remnants of the deceased, forcing their dying thoughts to be spoken aloud. Naturally, Yoo Jin-han, who had seen his fair share of strange and terrifying abilities, remained cool and composed, masking his immediate discomfort as he processed what this meant. He rubbed his chin in thought, considering both the usefulness and the dangers of such a skill, before finally advising her to keep that ability under wraps. He wasn't worried about the morality of it. This was the hunter world after all, but he knew from experience that certain abilities attracted the wrong kind of attention. If people knew she had the power to drag secrets from the dead, there would be no shortage of individuals willing to silence her for good. He told her that, for the sake of her own safety, it was best to leave out certain details when registering her skills officially, suggesting that they edit parts of Shadowless Day and the Sandals of Hermes to avoid unwanted scrutiny. To his mild surprise, Yerim instantly latched onto his wisdom, practically fawning over his strategic thinking as she praised him for knowing exactly what to do. Her enthusiasm irritated one particular person in the room: Yoo Jin-han's ever-possessive younger brother. Yoo Hyun, who had been watching the entire exchange with increasing jealousy, swooped in before Yerim could praise Yoo Jin-han any further, crossing his arms and grinning smugly as he loudly proclaimed that Yoo Jin-han had only learned all of this for him and not for her. The sheer pettiness of the statement immediately turned the room into a battleground as Yerim shot back, saying she was the one benefiting from Yoo Jin-han's knowledge now, while Yoo Hyun insisted that his older brother had spent years studying hunters solely to protect him. The two, despite being terrifyingly powerful S-rankers, devolved into a childish, petulant squabble, both vying for Yoo Jin-han's attention, throwing increasingly ridiculous claims at each other about who Yoo Jin-han favored more. Slightly concerned, Yoo Jin-han stood there, caught between a self-proclaimed little sister figure and an actual little brother, wondering if they would ever get along or if he was doomed to referee their arguments for the rest of his life. The scene shifted to the bustling Hunter Association building, where hundreds of journalists and reporters had gathered, their cameras flashing, their microphones poised as they awaited the grand arrival of the newly awakened S-ranker, Park Yim. The Ice Queen, no longer the withdrawn, silent girl she once was, stepped forward with confidence, her very presence commanding the attention of the crowd. From afar, Yoo Jin-han watched like a quiet guardian, standing by the edges of the scene while the press swarmed Yim, his gaze thoughtful but distant. Kim Sang-gan, who had been keeping an eye on him, finally spoke up, asking why he didn't just go with her. After all, she had been disappointed earlier when he brushed off her concerns, and even now it was clear that she valued his presence. Yoo Jin-han, however, only shook his head and smiled faintly, saying that once Yerim experienced the S-rank celebrity life, she wouldn't miss him anymore. This was her moment. She deserved to shine without him hovering in the background. Still, he couldn't deny that he was genuinely happy to see her transform from a withdrawn, troubled girl into a confident and joyful young woman. At the same time, his thoughts lingered on something more troubling: the dungeon break, the monster they had fought, the deviation from his original past. None of this had happened before. That meant the timeline had already begun shifting in unpredictable ways. If a major event like this had never occurred in his past life, then what other unknown threats were waiting down the line? Pushing those thoughts aside for the moment, he decided to shift gears and focus on his original goal: finding talented individuals before the rest of the world recognized their worth. He spent the next few hours scanning the crowds, watching carefully, but nothing stood out. Just when he was about to lose hope, he finally spotted something remarkable. Without a second thought, he bolted forward, pushing through the throng of people, ignoring Kim's bewildered expression as he snatched the arm of an unsuspecting man. Yongwoo. The moment their eyes met, Wu's gaze flickered with confusion, as if trying to recall a face he should know but couldn't quite place. Yu Jinhan, ever the actor, immediately chuckled like they were long-lost friends, joking that it had been so long that it was fine if Wu didn't remember him, but in reality, he wasn't here for a nostalgic reunion. His eyes subtly flicked toward Wu's status screen, confirming what he already knew: mastery of the golden smithy. The realization hit him like a lightning bolt. Wu had the potential to unlock a double S-rank blacksmithing skill, a level of talent so rare that not even the greatest equipment in the future could compare to what this man could create. And yet, in his original timeline, Wu had gone completely unnoticed. That wouldn't happen this time. He immediately began firing off questions, to which Wu, caught completely off guard, answered cautiously, explaining that he had only recently awakened and had come to the association to claim his government subsidy for F-rank hunters. The man was practical, painfully aware of how little F-rankers were valued, so when Yu Jinhan offered to train him, he immediately refused, stating that no one would hire a broke F-ranker like him. Yu Jinhan, grinning like he had just heard a challenge, countered instantly. He offered free training at World's Edge Guild, an opportunity so outrageous that Wu openly frowned at him, annoyed at his persistence. Before the man could refuse again, Kim Sangan, tired of watching Yu Jinhan run off and grab random strangers, forcibly dragged him away. As Yu Jinhan dangled by his collar like a misbehaving cat, Wu watched the bizarre sight, his eyes narrowing in recognition. "Wait, how do you know Kim Sangan of World's Edge Guild?" he finally asked. Still grinning despite being physically restrained, Yu Jinhan casually dropped the bombshell. "Oh, my little brother's the guild master." The statement hit Wu like a freight train, and before he could process it, Yu Jinhan hit him with one final offer: free gear, free training, and the chance to actually develop his skills instead of letting them go to waste. For the first time, Wu hesitated. Something about Yu Jinhan's insistence, his sheer earnestness, got to him in a way that no one else ever had. His entire life, people had dismissed his talents, told him that his skills were worthless, that he should give up and focus on something else. Yet here was this ridiculous, overly persistent man, practically dragging him into a future he had never even dared to imagine. For the first time in years, Wu felt seen. He bowed deeply, his voice thick with emotion as he tearfully accepted Yu Jinhan's offer. Later that evening, as Yu Jinhan handed him a cheap vending machine coffee to help him calm down, Wu confessed everything: the struggles of his past, the way people had always dismissed him, the crushing debt that had left him with nothing. Yu Jinhan, his own past weighing heavily in his chest, knew exactly how it felt. So instead of giving him more sympathy, he stood up, clenched his fist, and yelled something so dramatically positive that it felt like a sports movie. And at the end, he casually slid in an "I love you." With that, Wu Yong became his newest recruit, but their problems weren't over yet. Because the next obstacle? Director Seok, World's Edge Guild's HR manager, and he wasn't convinced about free training for a stranger. Yu Jinhan kept a friendly, almost innocent smile on his face, but inwardly, he was furious. He had expected resistance from Director Seok, the HR manager of World's Edge Guild, but he hadn't expected the man to be so blatantly condescending toward Wu. Instead of giving the F-ranker a fair assessment, Seek openly mocked him, pointing out his ragged clothing, his slouched posture, and the sheer pathetic aura of hopelessness that surrounded him. With a sneer, Seok remarked that if they made exceptions for people who looked so broke and spineless, the entire guild would be overrun with freeloaders. The words cut deep, and Yu Jinhan could feel Wu's hope fading right beside him. Gritting his teeth, Yu Jinhan immediately stepped up, vouching for Wu's talent, highlighting his sharp intuition and unique skills. He emphasized that Wu wasn't just some random beggar trying to mooch off a guild. He was a craftsman, a future blacksmith of legendary potential. However, Seek wasn't convinced. Instead of considering Wu's abilities, he merely rolled his eyes and flipped Yu Jinhan off, muttering that finding some talented nobodies wasn't proof of anything. Luck was a real thing, after all. To make matters worse, the man then took the chance to insult Yu Jinhan directly, reminding everyone that our hero himself had fallen for a blatant awakening scam just days ago. If that wasn't embarrassing enough, Seok pointed out that Yu Jinhan had only gotten into World's Edge Guild through nepotism, riding on his little brother's reputation rather than his own skills. Yu Jinhan, despite wanting to strangle the smug bastard, stayed cool. He agreed that Seok had a fair point. He had indeed made some horrible decisions in the past. But even so, he wasn't going to back down. Wu was someone with real potential, someone who deserved a chance. Unfortunately, Wu had already heard enough. Before Yu Jinhan could argue any further, Wu bolted from the building, his face flushed with humiliation, his body stiff with embarrassment. He didn't wait for Yu Jinhan to stop him, he just ran. Outside, Yu Jinhan found him leaning against a wall, staring at the ground, looking like a man who had just been crushed under the weight of the world. Yu Jinhan wanted to say something, to call Yu Hyun and force him to step in, but Wu shook his head before he even got the chance. "It's okay," Wu murmured, his voice a little raw, a little broken. "I'm just grateful that someone like you actually believes in me." Still, instead of giving up completely, he revealed that he planned to give his passion another try. He mentioned a place that was willing to hire even F-rankers, hoping to at least get his foot in the door somewhere. Yu Jinhan, feeling slightly less frustrated, nodded in approval, thinking that this was a good first step until the sound of tires screeching against the pavement made them both turn. A black SUV pulled up, its tinted windows barely reflecting the light of the street lamps, and before either of them could react, several men stepped out, their expressions a little too eager, a little too pleased to see Wu. Debt collectors, Wu's entire demeanor changed the moment he saw them. He stiffened but didn't resist as the men casually greeted him, patting his shoulder like old friends. With mocking cheerfulness, they asked about the subsidy he had received, knowing full well it wouldn't be nearly enough to cover what he owed. Without hesitation, they motioned for him to get in the car, claiming they had a new job for him, one that would help pay off his mountain of debt. Yu Jinhan, not about to let Wu get dragged into something shady, immediately called them out, bluntly accusing them of exploiting him. The gangsters merely laughed, giving him a once-over, before one of them, a bald guy with tattoos covering his arms, asked Yu Jinhan the real question. "Why do you even give a crap?" Yu Jinhan, sweating bullets, had to think fast. Well, he cleared his throat and forced out a grin. I want to come along." That caught them off guard. Now stuffed in the backseat of the car, Yu Jinhan awkwardly shifted in his seat, glancing at Wu, who looked just as confused as the gangsters themselves. "All right, spill it," one of the men finally said, turning to Yu Jinhan with a suspicious glare. "Why the hell are you here? You don't owe us anything." Wu, despite the tension, tilted his head slightly, also curious. Yu Jinhan grinned like an idiot, throwing an arm around Wu's shoulders before cutting him off before he could reveal that he was Yu Hyun's brother. "Oh, me? We're childhood friends," he lied smoothly, ignoring Wu's incredulous look. "I just couldn't let my old buddy get dragged off alone." He then went the extra mile, claiming that as a fellow F-ranker, he was totally interested in the job they were offering. One of the gangsters, the tattooed bald guy, smirked at him. "Unlike big guilds, we actually let F-rankers join the workforce," he said, acting like he was doing them a favor. Yu Jinhan, keeping up his act, clapped his hands together like he was genuinely thrilled. "Wow, you guys turned out to be pretty nice." The men laughed, seemingly amused until their expressions turned cold. "All right, sign here." A contract was thrust in front of him, and Yu Jinhan's casual grin faltered slightly as he recognized the scam immediately. Years ago, he had been tricked into signing one of these exact contracts. The mining contracts were a scam. Workers like Wu would be forced to mine inside dungeons, with up to 80% of their earnings taken as a protection fee. Even worse, hunters tasked with leading the mining teams didn't actually protect the workers. If a monster showed up, the hunters would leave them behind to die. Yu Jinhan kept up his friendly mask, but inside, he was seething. When they finally arrived at the guild building, Yu Jinhan loudly, sarcastically complimented their amazing guild name. That earned him a swift kick in the back. As he hit the ground groaning, he looked up just in time to see Wu also get kicked. The bald guy mockingly apologized but immediately blamed Yu Jinhan for voluntarily getting involved. Yu Jinhan, gritting his teeth, pulled Wu into his arms, holding his crying, humiliated friend as the man repeatedly apologized for dragging him into this. Before Yu Jinhan could console him, he was forcibly dragged away. The boss of the operation sat across from him, shoving a document into his hands, casually explaining that he would be paid a generous 20% of his labor before fees. Since Yu Jinhan didn't have debt to tie him to the contract, the terms were magically enforced by a curse. Without giving Wu a second to think, they pressed his fingerprint onto the contract, sealing his fate. Yu Jinhan, eyes darkening, glanced at the boss. "Hey, before I sign, let me compare contracts." The gangsters laughed, amused by his audacity, but handed it over anyway. One glance, and Yu Jinhan saw red. Wu's contract only gave him 10% of his earnings. The boss grinned, saying it was to help pay off his debt faster. Yu Jinhan, his anger finally boiling over, declared it for what it was. "This is a slave contract." Then, with no hesitation, he ripped the document in half. The room fell silent, no curse activated. The gangsters stared, horrified. Yujin Han, his patience at its limit, kicked the boss straight in the jaw, sending him crashing into a table. The gangsters, realizing they had just messed with someone powerful, immediately began to panic. The pink-hued restaurant, bustling with energy and lively chatter, seemed like an odd place for an urgent discussion. Yet here Yujin Han was, sitting across from Kim Sunan, watching as the massive bodyguard carefully poured his drink before placing the bottle aside with an air of solemnity. The shift in Sunan's demeanor was strange normally. The man was composed but distant, treating Yujin Han as a minor inconvenience he was forced to tolerate, rather than someone worthy of real recognition. Yet tonight there was something different in the way he carried himself, something weightier in his gaze as he sat upright, his usual imposing presence softened by a strange, unexpected respect. The conversation took a turn that Yujin Han hadn't quite anticipated. Sunan, who had always seemed indifferent toward him, began opening up, reflecting on how his perspective had changed over time. When they had first met, Sunan had seen him as nothing more than a nuisance, a freeloading older brother who used his connection to Han Yu-hyun to insert himself into a world where he didn't belong. He had watched Yujin Han stumble through dungeons, barely scraping by, and had assumed he would never be anything more than an F-ranker surviving on scraps. But that perception had begun to shift. The dungeon break had been the first sign. Sunan had witnessed Yujin Han's ability to remain calm under pressure, to maneuver through a battle far above his weight class without flinching. Instead of panicking, instead of relying on others to save him, Yujin Han had taken control, navigating the crisis with strategy rather than raw strength. But what truly cemented Sunan's newfound respect wasn't just his composure in battle, it was how he treated the people around him. Gaining the trust of an S-ranker like Yi Rim wasn't a small feat. The girl had been reclusive, untrusting, someone who had been manipulated and used her entire life, yet Yujin Han had managed to pull her from her shell. Not through force, but through genuine care. He had confronted her abusive uncle, made sure she had the freedom to live on her own terms, and ensured that she would never again be controlled by those who sought to use her. Then there was Wu, a complete stranger, an F-ranker with no future, a man that the world had discarded without a second thought. Where most would have ignored him, Yujin Han had reached out, insisting that his skills were valuable, offering him a place to belong without expecting anything in return. Sunan had seen it all, and despite his initial skepticism, he had come to understand something undeniable. Yujin Han was not just some leech clinging to his brother's fame. He was something else entirely. He was someone who, despite being an F-ranker himself, refused to see others as weak. Where the rest of the world dismissed those without power, Yujin Han gave them hope, gave them purpose, and lifted them up, piece by piece. Yujin Han listened, processing Sunan's words with a quiet sense of amusement. It wasn't often that someone who had doubted him so thoroughly finally came around. And seeing Sunan struggling to express something so heartfelt was almost surreal. But deep down, despite the awkwardness of the moment, despite the unexpected weight of the conversation, Yujin Han couldn't deny that it felt good to be acknowledged, to be respected, to finally be seen for who he was. As the night continued, Sunan subtly shifted the conversation toward the future, expressing concern over what came next. The dungeon break had already proven that the timeline had deviated from what Yujin Han once knew, and if that was just the beginning, there was no telling what other unknown threats lay ahead. If the world was shifting, then the dangers ahead would be unpredictable, and even though Yujin Han had been steadily gathering allies, he still had a long way to go before he could truly consider himself prepared for whatever came next. With that lingering in the air, the two finished their meal, stepping out of the restaurant into the cool night, the sounds of the city humming in the background. Then the most terrifying question imaginable came from Sunan's lips. "Do you not remember what happened last night?" Instantly, Yujin Han screamed internally. Panic shot through him, his body reacting on pure instinct as he shouted the one thing no man wants to be accused of. Ignoring his dramatic reaction, Sunan calmly offered him herbal juice for his hangover, but things only got worse when the big guy started massaging his legs. Yujin Han, already spiraling, was about to protest when Sunan went even further. He pulled out a golden pot and offered it to him for, well, reasons. That was it. That was his breaking point. Finally, unable to take the over-the-top level of caring attention anymore, Yujin Han demanded to know why Sunan was acting so strangely. That was when Sunan delivered the final blow. Apparently, after getting dead drunk, Yujin Han had stared Sunan directly in the eyes and declared his love for him. Not once, not twice, but dozens of times. Hearing this, Yujin Han immediately collapsed onto the floor, prostrating an apology, his soul practically leaving his body. To his surprise, though, Sunan didn't seem upset. Instead, the bodyguard admitted that it had actually meant a lot to him. For Sunan, the entire experience had brought back memories of his younger days. back when he would carry his dead drunk grandfather home, only for the old man to shout his love for him in his intoxicated state. Yu Jinhan's awkward drunken scene had reminded him of those golden years, allowing him to relive something he had long since lost. In a strange, wholesome way, it had meant everything to him. Sunan, still completely sincere, thanked Yu Jinhan for giving him that moment again. Relief flooded through Yu Jinhan's body when he realized that, in Sunan's eyes, he wasn't a romantic figure, he was a nostalgic reminder of a beloved grandparent. For once, his ridiculous skill had worked in his favor. Sunan then continued, explaining that he felt like he was with his grandfather again, and that taking care of Yu Jinhan had felt like a responsibility he wanted to uphold. However, he also promised to not be so over-the-top weird about it anymore. Finally, before leaving, Sunan asked if he was allowed to drop by occasionally, just to check in. Yu Jinhan, still processing everything, nodded absently, still too dazed from his near-social death experience. The moment Sunan left, Wu finally crawled out of hiding, looking as if he had just survived a battlefield. For some reason, the blacksmith seemed genuinely terrified of Sunan, though Yu Jinhan wasn't sure if it was because of his raw strength or his overwhelming intensity. Before they could discuss anything, though, the door suddenly burst open, practically flying off its hinges. Yim stormed in, grinning like a lunatic, congratulating Yu Jinhan on moving next door to her. However, the second she noticed Wu latched onto him, her mood soured instantly. Meanwhile, Yu Jinhan sat in deep thought, questioning why he had been given such a strange skill. A few days later, the trio sat around a large dining table, enjoying an extravagant meal cooked by Wu. The blacksmith, ever the modest one, insisted that it was the least he could do for being given free accommodation. Yim, of course, immediately complained, stuffing her mouth full of food while grumbling that he should be doing a lot more than just cooking. Shifting the topic, Wu mentioned that Sunan, who had been visiting daily, was finally off on a raid. Yu Jinhan, still recovering from his most humiliating drinking experience to date, finally breathed a sigh of relief at the news. At least for now, he was safe. Yu Jinhan, ever the instigator, casually mentioned to Yerim that once she started raiding dungeons, she'd be appearing on TV regularly. The Ice Queen, as smug as ever, grinned with uncontainable excitement, already picturing herself becoming famous and making tons of money. With an exaggerated air of arrogance, she declared that her first goal with her newfound fortune would be to buy a mansion, and then in her grandest scheme yet steal her guardian back from Wu. Yu Jinhan merely smiled wryly, amused by the endless bickering between the two. However, their smugness quickly crumbled when he dropped a bombshell on them. The two of them were going to camp together. The realization hit like a truck, and almost instantly, chaos erupted. Wu, clearly unenthused about having to spend an extended period of time with an overly competitive S-ranker, groaned, while Yerim, offended by the mere suggestion that she should have to share space with him, rolled her eyes. Neither was particularly thrilled with this forced bonding exercise, but Yu Jinhan, enjoying their reactions far too much, made his exit before they could argue further. As he opened the door, he was greeted by the unexpected presence of Director Seok. The man had arrived in person to pick them up due to an apparent change in schedule, making it clear that this was happening whether they liked it or not. Before long, the trio found themselves dropped straight into the middle of a battlefield, staring down a horde of demons armed with nothing but a giant black pole. Panic immediately set in. Yu Jinhan, feeling genuinely horrified, shouted that basic training was supposed to involve taking on one monster at a time, not a full-blown invasion. Director Seek, watching the spectacle with far too much amusement, simply laughed, explaining that the more monsters they encountered, the quicker they would get used to it. Yu Jinhan, completely unconvinced, mentally noted how flawed this logic was. But before he could argue any further, the trio had no choice but to engage. Yim, wasting no time, took off ahead of them, urging them not to worry. Leaping onto the nearest monster, she unleashed a freezing storm of ice, the sub-zero temperatures burning through the creatures' bodies like wildfire. Without even breaking a sweat, she stabbed one of the dead monsters with the black rod, then turned to Yu Jinhan, smiling sweetly as she asked if they could grill and feast on it. Director Seok, impressed by her sheer strength, was in the middle of admiring how effortlessly an S-ranker could handle a battlefield, when a voice interrupted him from behind. A lady approached, questioning whether it was really appropriate to let newbies handle this many monsters all at once. Adjusting his spectacles, the director waved off her concerns, expressing more worry about something entirely different, the possibility that Yu Jinhan and Wu wouldn't even get a chance to fight a single monster before Rim wiped out the entire field. His concerns quickly became a reality. Just as he made the comment, Rim had already defeated the remaining monsters, stacking their frozen corpses into a disturbingly perfect Christmas tree shape. It should have ended there. But just as they thought the battle was over, one of the defeated monsters, still half buried in the pile, launched a surprise attack. Its target? A completely defenseless Wu. Yu Jinhan, seeing the attack coming, immediately shouted for Wu to grab the spear and aim at the monster, but fear overtook him. Instead of fighting back, Wu panicked, threw the weapon away, and bolted, tears streaming down his face as he ran for his life. The monster lunged at him, but before it could strike, Yu Jinhan leapt forward, making a daring save. Afterward, he scolded Wu for abandoning his weapon, explaining that the so-called monsters were nothing but F-ranked tooth moles, known for their poor eyesight and predictable movement patterns. Since they could only run in straight lines, they were among the easiest monsters to take down. Director Siak, watching the battle unfold, found himself carefully analyzing Yu Jinhan's movements. He was too experienced, far too composed for someone who had supposedly just awakened. There was something off about him, something that didn't quite add up. While Yu Jinhan reassured Wu, the young blacksmith praised him for his fearless demeanor, saying it felt as if he had been an active hunter for years. The comment struck a chord. For a brief moment, Yu Jinhan wondered if he had overdone it, if he had made himself stand out too much. To remedy the situation, he quickly tossed the spear aside, pretending to be scared, letting the next tooth mole jump over him harmlessly. Director Siak, watching the spectacle, suddenly found himself re-evaluating his initial assessment. Perhaps Yu Jinhan wasn't the hotshot he initially suspected. As the test concluded, the trio stepped outside, each reacting very differently to the experience. Wu, still gloomy and shaken, trailed behind them. Yim, on the other hand, was practically bouncing with excitement, already eager for a second round. Wu, feeling ashamed, apologized for his cowardice, expressing regret for not being able to fight properly. Yu Jinhan, ever understanding, reassured him, suggesting that combat might not be his forte and that was completely fine. Yim, feeling bold, couldn't resist boasting about how much better she had performed. Yu Jinhan, not wanting another argument to break out, urged her to stop comparing and instead focus on getting along. Director Sak then reappeared, congratulating them for successfully completing their basic training. He praised Yim's outstanding performance, while teasing the other two for their lackluster efforts. With the training over, he announced that their theoretical education would begin the next day. That was when he introduced the lady from earlier, the one who had questioned his methods, as their in-charge professor. The moment she introduced herself, something clicked in Yu Jinhan's mind. A spark of recognition flashed in his memory. She was no ordinary researcher. She was Sok Kayan, the young genius who had traveled to America and uncovered the fundamental principles of dungeon formation. She was a pioneer in the field, someone who had changed the way the world understood dungeon structures. Before he could stop himself, the name Dr. White slipped from his lips. That caught her attention immediately. Her gaze sharpened as she scrutinized him, clearly intrigued by the fact that he knew that name. Considering only a select few referred to her as Dr. White, her curiosity intensified. She remarked on his knowledge, noting how rare it was for an F-ranker to be aware of her alias. Yu Jinhan, thinking fast, casually brushed it off, claiming he had heard it from the HR team. But as he said it, something clicked in his mind again. Both Director Siak and Dr. White shared the same surname. That meant they were connected. And suddenly, things started making a lot more sense. Yu Jinhan's mind raced as he turned back to his younger brother, his thoughts consumed by the possibilities that had just unfolded before him. The system notification had caught him completely off guard. He had never once considered the idea that his nurturer's skill, a skill designed to influence and enhance humans, might extend to monsters as well. If that was true, if he could somehow use his ability to tame this cub, then not only would they be able to keep it, but his brother would gain an incredibly powerful mount in the future. Yu Hyun, still frustrated from the endless struggle, breathed heavily, his expression dark with irritation as he glared at the mischievous fire-lion cub now confined in the garden. His patience had been tested to its absolute limit, and he had all but given up on the creature, declaring that it was too wild, too uncontrollable, too much of a liability. If he couldn't tame it, then no one should be allowed to get their hands on it. It was too dangerous to be auctioned, too powerful to fall into the wrong hands. Yu Jinhan didn't like the sound of that. As his younger brother spoke, Yu Jinhan found himself staring at the tiny monster, his mind still running through the implications of what had just happened. This wasn't something that had happened in his previous timeline. This was completely new territory. If his skill could extend its influence to monsters, then what else was possible? Could he tame even higher-ranked creatures in the future? Could this be the key to altering the course of history in ways he had never even considered? Yu Hyun, noticing his older brother lost in thought, scoffed and reminded him that it was pointless to get attached to a monster that refused to be tamed. But Yu Jinhan, now thrumming with excitement, wasn't so sure. If this skill activation had happened naturally, then there was a chance he could control it. Cautiously, he approached the cub. The creature, sensing his presence, immediately bared its tiny fangs, its fur bristling, flames flickering along its horns and tail as it hissed a warning. But instead of reacting with intimidation, Yu Jinhan took a deep breath and did something that no one in their right mind would have attempted. He spoke softly to it. He didn't try to command it, didn't try to force his will onto it. Instead, he did exactly what he did best. He nurtured. Somewhere deep within him, he activated his skill, focusing his intent not on dominance, but on recognition, on acceptance, on forming a bond. He let his presence settle, allowing his ability to connect with the creature the same way it did with humans, and then something shifted. A new system notification appeared before his eyes. The target is resisting influence, attempting to stabilize connection. Yu Jinhan's breath caught in his throat. It was working. The cub, though still tense, had stopped snarling. Its flames dimmed slightly, and its body lowered, ears flicking forward as it watched him closely, its natural aggression wavering just enough to show that something inside of it was beginning to change. Yu Hyun, noticing this, narrowed his eyes, watching carefully. His brother had never once displayed taming abilities before, yet here he was, slowly but surely breaking through the resistance of a beast that had fought back against every other attempt. The progress bar continued to climb. Yu Jinhan's pulse pounded in his ears as he maintained his focus. If he could just hold on a little longer, the cub let out a soft growl, its body trembling, torn between instinctive resistance and something deeper, something unfamiliar yet strangely comforting. Then, just as the process was nearing its final stage, Yu Hyun, still watching with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity, finally spoke up, his tone unreadable. He wanted to know what exactly his brother was doing. Yu Jinhan barely spared him a glance, too focused on the bond forming before him. He simply smirked, shrugging as if this wasn't the single most insane revelation of his life. Then, as if on cue, the final notification appeared. Bonding successful. The infant horned fire lion has recognized you as its caretaker. The moment the words flashed across his vision, the cub stopped growling completely. Instead, it took a hesitant step forward, its fiery tail lowering, its aggressive stance melting away. Then, as if the change had been waiting to happen all along, the creature nudged its head against Yu Jinhan's palm. Yu Hyun, watching this unfold, finally let out a long sigh, rubbing his temple as if he wasn't sure whether to be amazed or completely exasperated. Yu Jinhan, on the other hand, was already grinning. He had just tamed a magic beast, and now the real fun was about to begin. Yu Jinhan, now fully aware of the enormous value of taming a magical beast, couldn't help but pry further, wanting to know just how common or rare it was for guilds to have beast mounts. His little brother, Yu Hyun, explained that while a few guilds had managed to tame certain creatures, they were all low-ranked and domesticated species, ones that couldn't be used in battle or serve as powerful mounts. There was no record of a high-tier, combat-capable magical beast ever being successfully tamed. That single piece of information sent Yu Jinhan's mind spiraling with excitement. If this cub was indeed one of a kind, then he had just stumbled upon an opportunity so rare and valuable that it could reshape the entire future of combat-based hunting. The sheer potential of raising a magical beast that no other guild had access to, a creature that could one day become a force of nature in battle, was too much to ignore. The implications weren't just about power. This was an entirely new market, one that he could monopolize if he played his cards right. Without hesitation, he began trying to convince his brother to let him take full responsibility for the cub, passionately explaining that abandoning such a creature would be a tragic waste and that, with enough time and training, it could become the strongest companion a hunter had ever tamed. He spun an elaborate web of persuasion, listing every possible benefit, highlighting how an untamed beast of this caliber could give their guild an unprecedented advantage, and even subtly slipping into fantasies of wealth, imagining himself as the first and greatest beast tamer of the modern world. Yu Hyun, ever the realist, listened to his older brother's rambling sales pitch, but after hearing a solid 5 minutes of business talk, strategic predictions, and an embarrassing moment where Yu Jinhan muttered about naming himself the Tamer of Legends, he finally cut him off, asking the most critical question: how exactly did Yu Jinhan plan to tame and raise the creature? Yu Jinhan, still brimming with enthusiasm, grinned confidently and immediately began explaining his care plan, acting as if he had been preparing for this moment his entire life. The first step, of course, was feeding. He pulled out a kibble bowl, a remnant from one of his past part-time jobs, and asked what the cub preferred to eat. At first, Yu Hyun humored him, casually explaining that, based on its species, the fire lion cub's diet would likely require a mixture of monster meat and a C-ranked mana stone. Yu Jinhan, still deep in self-congratulatory mode, nodded along enthusiastically, completely missing the key detail until his brain finally caught up with the numbers. A C-ranked mana stone worth 10 million won per piece. His enthusiasm died instantly. He felt his entire spirit leave his body. His dream of becoming the world's greatest beast tamer was now competing against the harsh reality of financial ruin. Feeding this cub wasn't just a simple commitment, it was a never-ending money pit, a black hole of financial suffering. He could already hear the screams of his bank account, the wails of his non-existent savings, and the ghostly whispers of the money he would never see again. His once grand visions of raising an unstoppable beast army, of standing atop the hunter world with a fleet of magical creatures, crumbled before his eyes. He barely managed to keep his composure as he mechanically prepared the meal, carefully mixing the meat with what might as well have been solid gold, and set it down for the cub. His hands trembling slightly as he calculated how much it would cost to keep feeding it for months, let alone years. Just as he was mentally writing his will, preparing for the financial death that awaited him, his younger brother, in his usual nonchalant tone, casually mentioned that he would cover the costs. 10 billion won annually? No problem. Yu Jinhan nearly collapsed in relief. His suffering was short-lived, and now, as he watched the cub happily devour its luxurious meal, he found himself oddly charmed by the little creature. It was strangely adorable, even with its wild, unruly nature, and despite all the chaos it had already caused, he felt an unexpected attachment forming. The more he looked at it, the more he found himself blushing at how ridiculously cute it was. He had never been one to fawn over animals, but there was something about the way it chomped down on its food with tiny, satisfied growls, the way its tail flicked happily as it ate, that made him feel like he was raising an actual baby. His curiosity grew. Was this thing smarter than it let on? Could it understand commands the way humans did? Could it somehow interpret speech beyond just basic instincts? He decided to leave that mystery for another day, moving on to the next phase of bonding. With a grin, he removed his belt and started a game of tug-of-war with the small beast, testing its strength and reactions. Having worked part-time at a veterinary clinic, he knew just enough about animal behavior to keep things under control, though the sheer power of the cub quickly became apparent. He jokingly dubbed it the tug-of-war of death as the little creature nearly dragged him across the room. Eventually, after tiring the beast out slightly, he pulled out the tamer's token, holding it before the cub. At first, the fire lion reacted with hostility, but after sniffing the token, something shifted. Its aggression diminished, its body relaxed, and much to Yu Jinhan's absolute delight, a system notification popped up. The nurturer's title amplifies the tamer's token effect. Magical beast recognition increased. The once ferocious creature suddenly turned affectionate, nuzzling into him with unexpected warmth. Just as Yu Jinhan was enjoying his success, Yu Hyun stepped closer, and in an instant, the cub bit his hand. Yu Jinhan, reacting instinctively, scolded the creature like a strict mother, causing it to whimper and back away. Fortunately, Yu Hyun's S-rank status meant he was uninjured, and instead of being angry, he actually felt relieved, realizing that the cub wasn't aggressive toward his older brother at all. Seeing the obvious bond that had formed, Yu Hyun finally gave in completely, agreeing to let Yu Jinhan take full responsibility for raising it. Yu Jinhan, meanwhile, was already lost in another daydream. He imagined himself surrounded by an army of magical beasts, their majestic forms standing behind him as he became the most legendary beast tamer in history. He could already see the headlines, the awe, the admiration, until Yu Hyun asked where exactly he planned to keep it. Snapping back to reality, Yu Jinhan confidently stated that he would raise it at the dormitory, explaining that he had Ye Rim and Wu to help out. Yu Hyun at first seemed annoyed, but his expression quickly turned sentimental. Yu Jinhan realized something important: his little brother didn't want him to leave. Recalling Kim Sunan's advice, Yu Jinhan patted his younger brother's head, reassuring him that he wasn't moving out entirely. He'd still be around, splitting time between both places. Eventually, Yu Hyun accepted the answer, and in an unexpected shift, Yu Jinhan asked if his brother was free in the evening. When Yu Hyun asked why, Yu Jinhan casually suggested they have a drink together, reminiscing about how they would have probably been sharing drinks without a second thought if the world were still the same as before. Yu Hyun, caught off guard, blushed slightly before agreeing. The warmth of the moment lingered, and with that, Yu Jinhan moved to the final task, naming the cub. After pondering for a while, he settled on something symbolic. He named it Peace. Because, in his mind, taming the wildest creatures of the world was the first step toward true peace. Yu Jinhan couldn't help but feel a mix of embarrassment and amusement at his brother's overprotectiveness. Yu Hyun, despite being the mighty guildmaster of World's Edge and an S-rank hunter, still acted like an overbearing younger sibling, constantly watching over him. It was overwhelming in a way that Yu Jinhan hadn't quite adjusted to yet. The attention Yoo Hyun received was just as intense. The crowd buzzed with excitement, snapping pictures as he stood alongside Yerim during an interview. As expected, his little brother handled the media effortlessly, his presence radiating confidence as he discussed his role as both a senior hunter and a guildmaster. Yoo Hyun smoothly declared that he wanted to personally guide the new S-ranker, ensuring she reached her full potential. Meanwhile, Yoo Jin-han deliberately stayed in the background, avoiding the flashing cameras as he observed the spectacle unfolding before him. He had always known that Yoo Hyun was a natural at this sort of thing, effortlessly blending strength and charisma, but watching him promote the guild so skillfully was fascinating in its own way. The way he spoke about teamwork, strategy, and growth only served to reinforce how different things had become. Not long ago, Yoo Jin-han had been dismissed as useless, as a burden. But now, he was stepping into the dungeon with people who actually cared about him. That realization sent a surge of unexpected happiness through him, and he silently vowed to never let things fall apart as they once had in the past. He couldn't change everything, but he could at least change what mattered most. His gaze drifted from Yoo Hyun's interview to the two S-rankers standing together, a perfect contrast, one wielding blue fire, the other glacial frost. They were complete opposites, yet their abilities combined made them a formidable duo. It was a powerful visual one that the guild could capitalize on heavily in the future. Watching them, Yoo Jin-han's thoughts drifted to Kim Sunan. When would he awaken as an S rank? He knew that it was inevitable, but the timing of such an event was something he couldn't predict. With a hopeful glance, he placed a hand on Wu's shoulder, mentally encouraging him to work hard after all. In the future, Wu would be one of the greatest blacksmiths, crafting equipment unparalleled in quality. As the time to enter the D-ranked dungeon approached, the crew was given the opportunity to rent equipment for free, a rare perk for fresh recruits. Wu, excited by the selection, eagerly examined the various weapons and armor, though his enthusiasm was quickly dampened when the weapons master informed him that any damages to the gear would have to be paid for in full. That single sentence sucked the joy right out of him. Knowing that Wu would one day forge weapons far superior to anything here, Yoo Jin-han stepped in and handed him a high-ranked piece of gear, casually reassuring him that he wouldn't have to worry about costs. As he continued browsing, Yoo Jin-han's eyes landed on a shelf of potions, prompting him to curiously ask if they were also free. The answer, unfortunately, was no, they were only available for official guild members. Not wanting to pass up the opportunity for free supplies, he turned to Yim, subtly nudging her to grab a few extra potions and share them with him. Yim, always eager to push boundaries, complied without hesitation. However, in her exploration of the storage room, she stumbled across a nasty-looking weapon, a massive, oversized axe. Intrigued, she immediately asked if she could use it, only for Yoo Jin-han to advise against it, pointing out that such a weapon didn't match her frame or fighting style. It was a lesson she would eventually learn on her own, but he figured it wouldn't hurt to save her the trouble early on. Meanwhile, Yoo Hyun remained occupied with his interviews, speaking at length about the strength of his guild and the bright future of its members. Eventually, after wrapping up his media obligations, he approached Yoo Jin-han, apologizing for the delay. However, his tone quickly turned serious as he explained that the gate before them led to a D-ranked dungeon, a dangerous one that would seal itself upon entry. Once they stepped inside, there would only be two options: defeat the boss or face annihilation. To ensure their safety, Yoo Hyun handed them a gate stone, an extremely rare emergency item, capable of teleporting them out if things became too dire. Holding the gate stone in his hand, Yoo Jin-han found himself deeply reflecting on how much his life had changed. Just yesterday, he had been seen as worthless, as nothing more than a parasite clinging onto his brother's shadow. Now he was stepping into the unknown with a team of people who trusted him, people who had his back. A powerful sense of determination flooded him, and as he stepped through the gate, he silently vowed to never let history repeat itself. He was going to prevent the tragedies of the past from ever becoming a reality. But, as always, life had other challenges in store for him. The moment they entered the dungeon, Yim's excitement reached an all-time high. She exclaimed in awe, marveling at how it felt like stepping into an entirely different world. The vast, lush greenery, the towering trees, and the eerie silence gave it an almost mystical aura. Yoo Hyun, however, immediately chided her, warning her to stop treating it like a field trip. To emphasize his point, he nonchalantly set fire to the grass in front of them, his blue flames burning the vegetation to ashes in seconds. Yim, clearly irritated, demanded an explanation, questioning why he insisted on setting things on fire the moment they arrived. She then launched into a lengthy lecture about environmentalism, expressing deep frustration at his apparent disregard for nature. However, Yoo Hyun remained unfazed, his voice calm as he explained that things work differently here. He pointed toward a monster lurking in the shadows, reminding her that the first priority when entering a dungeon was ensuring one's own safety. In a dungeon, the strongest person must always take the lead, clearing obstacles before others. With a teasing smirk, he questioned whether she had been sleeping through her lectures. Yim, clearly flustered, huffed in protest, quickly defending herself by stating that she had attended all of them. However, she admitted that she lacked an AoE skill, meaning she couldn't clear large groups of enemies as efficiently as others. Yujin Han, ever the supportive guardian, stepped in to encourage her, assuring her that she would gain an AoE skill once she leveled up. He explained that as long as she kept grinding through monsters, she would reach level 10 in no time. However, he also noted an important truth: no one could predict what skill they would receive upon leveling up. Just then, as if on cue, a system panel appeared before him. It offered him the option to select a skill for Yim. A flicker of recognition crossed Yujin Han's mind as he scrolled through the available skills. He was searching for something specific, something that he remembered from his past life. Then, finally, he found it. Pale Rain. It was the signature AoE skill of the Ice Witch, a skill that had once defined Yirim as one of the most formidable hunters in the world. Without hesitation, Yujin Han applied the growth focus to that skill, ensuring that she would unlock it when the time came. The pieces were slowly falling into place, and this time, he was going to make sure everything turned out differently.
The mountain trembled as a loud gust swept through the valley, alarming beasts grazing below in peace. Birds scattered and massive creatures glanced up, sensing an unnatural pressure rapidly approaching from the sky. One of the beasts looked up, confused. A shimmering figure was descending faster than the eye followed. A blinding burst of blue light struck the ground, scattering energy and wind in all directions violently. From the glowing crater rose a man, eyes steady, ice crackling. He muttered with certainty, "Too easy." The young hunter shouted his plan, casting ice midair to support the man charging into battle. Watching beasts charge, the swordsman asked dryly if freezing them truly helped or just delayed our deaths. With a surge of red energy, he struck first, obliterating the enemies with a single devastating blast. He turned back calmly, explaining the real trick: crush their minds, not their frozen skins or shells. As monsters dropped frozen from the sky, one boy gasped, "It's like snow, just more deadly and loud." Yujin sighed, holding a rare item. Expensive stuff, but S-rankers always need the best gear. He encouraged Myungwoo to keep stabbing fallen monsters. "You need levels too, not just fancy tools." Myungwoo hesitated, then asked, "If I level up enough, will I get something actually useful?" Yujin smiled warmly. "Definitely, you've got potential." He didn't mention the secret skill that would soon awaken. Unknown to him, Myungwoo's SS rank crafting skill had one last hidden trigger closer than anyone had expected. The hidden condition appeared: reach level 10 and collect 10,000 pieces of scrap metal. Yujin blinked. Myungwoo cheered, proud of his progress. Yujin, confused, wondered what strange alert had just flashed earlier. Still confused, Yujin muttered, "Was that a system glitch? Or did it actually mean 10,000? While stabbing monsters diligently, Myungwoo continued leveling. Yujin questioned if the system UI was manually typed somewhere. Myungwoo finally reached level 10, excited. But nothing happened. No new skill. Just a pat on back. Even in the future, the system's origin stayed unknown. Some claimed it was a divine miracle. But Yujin doubted, would God really make something this cryptic, or this unstable, he quietly wondered. While Myungwoo leapt toward him, Yujin watched and asked, "Is that the last level already?" Catching his breath, Yujin noted, "He's nearly done." Just then, the system window blinked. Fond him, Myungwoo paused. "Something popped up in my status window." A voice responded awkwardly, "Oops, sorry," as if spying. The system glitched again, found him. Then apologized, startling Yujin just before something behind him moved fast. A teammate screamed, "Look out!" alerting Yujin, who instinctively turned just as danger closed in. A massive blast of fire and energy erupted. Yujin barely reacted before being shielded by someone else. Flames roared around them. "You okay?" someone asked. Yujin gasped, disoriented. What just happened?" As wind spiraled and fire hissed, someone yelled, "It's a boss monster! A real ambush!" The battlefield burned, scattered with debris. Reports said a high-level raid failed before reinforcements even arrived. A survivor panted, recalling the monster's strength. "We couldn't even see it before the attack started." He continued, "Then the saint came from nowhere." A colossal beast roared, emerging in full terrifying form. Elsewhere, Yujin listened carefully. So that was the same beast from the Broken Guild mission report? The beast screamed from above. "We have to retreat," Yujin said. "That monster isn't dying today." Jinwoo handed Yujin a crystal. "If it gets bad, run. Don't try to be heroic." Yujin stared silently at the crystal, heart pounding. His grip tightened around it, uncertainty sinking deeper. The world blurred. Yujin trembled. Is this happening again? The same moment. The same awful choice? He remembered last time Yoo-hyun standing behind facing death alone while Yujin escaped, helpless to intervene. As the crystal passed hands again, Yujin caught it tightly. His choice this time would be different. Yujin whispered, "We might need this." But his eyes said more. He knew what came next. The monster emerged, stronger than expected. Yujin's eyes flared blue. He recognized it from his past life. It's an S-rank beast, immune to most fire. Its weakness is a precision attack at the heart. The others stared. "How do you know that?" Yujin replied, "We fought it once. We all lost." As the beast shrieked again, Yujin muttered, "This time, we won't repeat the past. We end it." Yujin clenched his fists. "I won't make the same mistakes again. Not this time." He quickly gave orders. "Yerim, create a barrier using Frosty Sai. We'll strike together next." Yerim unleashed her power with focus. Cold wind burst outward, forming a shimmering defensive shield. Frosty Sai activated. Ice swept up in waves, surrounding the team with protective, glowing magic. Yujin pointed. "Yoo-hyun, you take the bird." Yoo-hyun nodded once, eyes sharp. "Will do." Yujin looked at Yerim. "Please keep him safe." His voice was calm, but his eyes serious. Yerim nodded. "Don't worry, I've got this." She handed Yujin the gate stone just in case. As the battle started, Yujin shouted, "Yoo-hyun, aim for the head!" The phoenix soared in, fire blazing. Yerim hesitated. "Should I help? I can fly." Yujin stopped her. "You'll roast without fire resistance." Yoo-hyun charged through flames. He couldn't fly, but his speed and flame resistance made him the best. The phoenix screeched from above, its wings flaring wide as it descended like a burning meteor. Flames spiraled behind it, scorching the sky. Yoo-hyun stood firm, facing the beast head-on. The phoenix crashed into the ground, erupting in fire and debris. The impact shook the battlefield. Yujin gasped from behind the barrier. "God, it landed!" His heart pounded with fear and urgency. Yoo-hyun didn't hesitate. He dashed forward again, blade ready, aiming straight for the monster's flaming head. Yoo-hyun swung hard, blade glowing. The timing was perfect. This was their best shot so far. His sword slashed across the phoenix's side, drawing flames and a loud shriek of pain. The others cheered as the creature reeled. He hit it. He really landed a clean blow. But the phoenix flapped its massive wings, lifting off again with terrifying speed and overwhelming force. "It's got a huge pair of wings," Yujin muttered, watching it soar straight above Yoo-hyun again. The phoenix flared brighter, wings wide. It screeched again and circled back toward the burning ground. Yoo-hyun didn't flinch. Flames dropped around him, but he stayed still, watching with unreadable focus. Yujin narrowed his eyes. Why is he not moving? He could have already dodged or gone airborne. Wait, did he unlock something? Yujin thought. Could he use Blue Willow's skill now? But it's sealed. The phoenix twisted midair, spotting Yoo-hyun below. It shrieked and dove, preparing for a second strike. The phoenix dove fast. Yujin turned, startled. The others shouted from the barrier, panic building quickly. "Yujin!" Yerim and the others screamed. "What now, mister?" Their eyes widened as fire closed in. The phoenix locked onto their position. "It's coming this way," Yerim shouted, arms raised to defend. Yerim panicked. "Will this stop it?" The barrier shook. Everyone clung to each other in fear. Yoo-hyun pushed forward. "Let go for a sec." His hand glowed as icy energy swirled tightly. He slashed down, yelling, "Blue Willows!" Shards of cold light launched toward the charging phoenix. The others gasped. "He can use it?" Yerim grinned. "Then it's time to end this." Yoo-hyun stood tall beneath the falling light. Time to finish this once and for all. The phoenix flinched as icy leaves struck its wings. Yoo-hyun's team watched, stunned by the result. "Wait, what is he doing?" one shouted. Yoo-hyun began moving, veering from the expected use of Blue Willows. "Step on them," Yerim yelled. "That's the real trick, run across the leaves, don't just attack." Yoo-hyun hesitated briefly, then nodded. With resolve, he placed his foot on the glowing ice leaves. The air shimmered as he dashed forward, gliding across ice midair. His path was now clear. Yoo-hyun's eyes lit up. "If I time it right," he whispered, "this might actually work." He dashed forward, each step atop shimmering leaves. One final leap launched him toward the phoenix. The beast screeched, fire pulsing around its core. Yoo-hyun adjusted his grip, bracing for the clash. A storm of flames exploded outward. The heat surged as the phoenix's core burned like the sun. Yoo-hyun charged straight into the firestorm, blade ready, shouting a cry louder than the monster's roar. Yoo-hyun closed in, his blade engulfed in flames. The phoenix's core pulsed, inches from his strike. He thrust forward. Fire and light erupted as his blade pierced through, triggering a violent explosion. The phoenix shrieked in agony. Yoo-hyun's strike had hit its heart precisely as Yujin had instructed earlier. The sky split in red light. The phoenix was consumed in a blinding, spiraling column of fire. A final explosion rocked the battlefield. Everything vanished in flames until only silence and falling ash remained. The explosion shook the ground. Yerim gasped, shielding her eyes from the burst of light. A voice called through the smoke. "Yerim, there's still time. You're the only one who can. The phoenix's remains thudded to the earth. Cold air spiraled around as silence slowly returned. Yu-hyun stepped down, light fading from his blade. He exhaled slowly, standing amidst frozen petals. Yujin ran forward, his voice breaking. Yu-hyun! Relief and worry mixed as he saw his brother standing. Yujin rushed over, eyes wide. Are you okay? Yu-hyun turned, smiling faintly. I'm fine. Yujin grabbed him tightly. You really used blue willows to make up for flying, Yu-hyun finished, grinning. I never thought of it like that, Yujin admitted. You made it work flawlessly. That tip changed everything, Yu-hyun said. It solved my greatest weakness. You gave me the answer. Yujin laughed awkwardly. That's not nothing. Myungwoo cheered nearby. He got a skill. Let's celebrate like we lived. Yu-hyun smiled at Yujin. It's all thanks to you. You're the reason I succeeded. Yujin laughed. Maybe I'll check your other skills when we're back. Excited voices rang around him. As the portal activated, Yerim shouted, Check mine too, mister. They all vanished in glowing blue, and reporters rushed in. Are you okay, sir? Civilians gathered, relieved the threat was over. Yujin noticed the cameras. I should keep my distance. Better let them talk to the association. Yujin thought, I'll just return the gear quietly. No attention, no interviews, just peace. Suddenly, thunderous footsteps echoed. Mr. Han! Someone shouted, sprinting straight toward him like a charging beast, and the man skidded in, bowing hard. I knew I should have gone with you, sir. Yujin flushed. I'm fine, seriously. Crowds began murmuring and staring. His plan had completely backfired again. From the side, Myungwoo watched blankly. Totally attracted all the attention, he muttered, eyes half-lidded in judgment. Yujin arrived at the towering guild building, calling out to Yu-hyun, hoping he was inside. He unpacked groceries the concierge gave him, muttering about monster raid money and their expensive taste. While waiting, he opened the habitat door and called Peace, his bond beast, out to play. Peace excitedly hopped toward him, but play turned rough as Yujin got smacked mid-chase again. Spinning on the floor with dizzy joy, Yujin laughed, shouting love for the cheeky little beast. Yujin grinned, tossing food at Peace, who devoured it joyfully, showered in gold from quests. Exhausted, he flopped back on the ground, muscles aching from every limb after Peace's energetic rampage. He stared at the ceiling, reflecting quietly, sighing, what a day. As calm finally settled in, strange thoughts returned, a system typo, pop-ups apologizing, and odd bugs blinking unnaturally across dungeon messages. Even a rare high-tier monster ambushed him, events that shouldn't happen yet, all crammed into one day. Yujin sat up with a sigh as Peace mewed nearby, confused by his sudden tension. He rubbed his chin, troubled by a thought. Could these strange events link to his regression? Peace growled playfully, but Yujin barely noticed, questioning if he'd broken something by traveling back in time. He wondered if time had shifted key events forward, causing anomalies meant for the distant future. Realizing the system might be reacting to him directly, Yujin muttered to himself, well, that explains it. Yujin shouted in frustration, waving his fist, scolding the system for being unclear from the start. He jabbed at a menu, annoyed, blaming its poor instructions for his earlier bad skill choice. Suddenly, panels burst open mid-air, bright and fast, flapping wildly before Yujin could even react. Startled, Yujin stared at the glowing mess, asking aloud what was happening with the glitching window. Elsewhere, a mysterious presence hovered near the system core, wondering aloud, do you think it got across? Far away, strange beings discussed Yujin's situation, saying they acted quickly with little time to intervene properly. They admitted forcing the connection open, wishing they'd had time to explain things clearly from the start. One figure expressed concern, hoping Yujin would understand what they rushed to deliver through the system. Yujin looked down, startled by a floating page labeled under your custody filled with unfamiliar profile pictures. Confused, he muttered, what's with this yearbook-looking thing? What was the system designer even thinking? Yujin stared at the screen, wondering if it only listed S-rank hunters under his care. He confirmed his guess, noticing missing names and 50 blank spots decorated with cheerful, oddly encouraging doodles. Yu-hyun entered, casually wiping blood away, apologizing for the delay and unaware of Yujin's stunned reaction. Seeing his brother pale and silent, Yu-hyun asked with concern, what's wrong? You don't look okay. A vicious beast growled inside the dungeon, red eyes glowing as it prepared to charge its prey. The young fire manticore rushed forward without hesitation, claws glowing as its flame aura flared outward. With a powerful leap, it struck cleanly, slashing the enemy beast down in a single blow. A camera recorded steadily. Flames burned in the aftermath, crackling beneath the blood-stained claw marks. Day 2 of Fire Manticore training, the log read. Subject shows dominance, restraint, and curiosity. Footage showed the juvenile manticore doubling in size over 2 days, aggressive, precise, and highly responsive. The researcher removed his helmet, amazed. Wow. Growing stronger and smarter. You're a real apex predator. He scooped up the manticore gently. Good work, Peace. The creature purred, glowing with affection and pride. Suddenly, Peace leapt forward. A violent slam sent another trainee flying across the room in pain. The researcher smirked slightly. Yeah, looks like training's working better than expected. Yujin grinned at the camera. Totally safe. Stats flashed STR plus 94, STR plus 45. Peace wagged happily. Flashback to the night before. A drink poured slowly. Yuyun asked curiously, monster breeder? Yujin poured just enough. Yeah, it popped up last minute after I reached level 10. Better to keep it vague, he thought. No need to mention brainwashing or mind control effects, he explained calmly. It lets me tame and level monsters alone. It's S-rank good for top creatures. Yuhyun glared intensely. You know how dangerous it is for someone like you to have that? Yujin panicked. Hey, don't lock me up again. He grabbed snacks, clearly trying to stay calm. He argued, think about it. A proper mount for every guild piece is just the beginning. Imagine storming huge dungeons on mounts. You'd ride, not walk. It'll change everything, Yujin said confidently. Peace was already tamed and under Yujin's care. Fetch, he shouted as the cub dashed forward, and Yujin trained with Peace beside him, punching hard. The system wants 50 S-rankers tamed. If I tame monsters instead of brainwashing people, it might seem way less suspicious, he thought. Later, he collapsed on the gym floor, gasping. Ugh, I'm exhausted, he muttered between heavy breaths. Peace tilted its head. Mew? Yujin chuckled weakly. Don't you get tired, Peace? Some partner you are. Still, he thought, if mounts make raids faster, we'll stop dungeon breaks, and maybe save the world. Yujin rolled on the floor dramatically with Peace in his arms. My conscience won't let me slack. He froze mid-roll at the sound of polite clapping nearby. Someone had been watching the whole time. A familiar voice praised, outstanding, Mr. Han. Yujin's eyes widened in shock. Director Sek? Sek smiled. Diligent of you to keep training even after the practicum. That's commitment I admire. Yujin stood quickly. Yuyun said I could use the gym. Siak replied, relax, I'm not kicking you out. Peace sat proudly beside the equipment, watching everything unfold with its usual calm, alert demeanor. Director Sok bowed deeply. Impressed is an understatement. Your work is truly inspirational, Mr. Han. Yujin blinked. What are you doing? Siak continued. I apologize for my earlier rudeness and lack of awareness. He added, with your insight analysis and this new skill, you clearly represent untapped brilliance, Mr. Han. Yujin flailed as Sok grabbed him. Let go, Sok pleaded. Join us and revolutionize the hunter world. Yujin panicked, flailing wildly. No, I can't. That job's way above my skill level. Peace leapt into his arms as Director Sok pleaded. But we need you, Mr. Han. Insight? Yeah, right, Yujin thought bitterly. I cheated, I already saw the future. None of this is real. You bullied me back then, he recalled, trembling. I'll never forget how Hayon treated me. Director Sok bowed low. Just tell us what you need. We'll cover every expense, everything you require. Come to think of it, Yujin realized, none of that actually happened this time around. Shimyoung-suk doesn't remember me as a loser, he thought. Now I'm actually the boss. A flash of determination crossed Yujin's face. Get lost? No, not this time. I've changed. He waved dismissively. Yu-hyun's already covering everything, and honestly, I'm not that tempted by free housing. Director Sok smiled. Perfect. Then let's sign the contract right now. A glowing screen appeared before him. Yujin explained calmly, I'll sign on as general staff. I'll freelance as a hunter separately. That way, I can breed mounts for every guild and earn much more money at the same time. One representative protested. Please reconsider. Yujin shrugged. You think your guild can handle an exclusive deal with me? With this skill, Yujin said, guilds could drastically increase raid efficiency. It's a rare, valuable advantage. He pointed at Peace. I'm basically a goose that lays golden eggs for S-rankers, no less. Yujin frowned. The world's full of people who'd burn it down just out of spite. Better to stay independent, he thought. I'll trade mounts to each guild for protection and survival. He grinned. Of course there'll be a small fee for safety. Just doing smart business. He added, Peace stays with me, and I'm an employee, so cover my back and expenses. Director Siak smiled, impressed. You've got everything worked out, Mr. Han. Very well, we have a deal. Director Siak asked politely, May I use the training footage for guild negotiations? Yujin nodded. Sure. Siak reached for the camera. Oh, and one more thing, he added, casually as possible. Yujin turned suspiciously. If Hayun becomes too dominant, will you join as a full hunter then? And Yujin hesitated, then narrowed his eyes. Wait, you're not recording this, are you? Siak chuckled, guilty. Drats, you got me. Yujin sighed, hugging Peace tighter with a glare. Yujin tilted his head. What's even the point of recruiting me? You've got my skill. He smiled, stroking Peace. You're already benefiting from me. There's not much else I can offer. Yujin added playfully, so don't come back later saying you regretted this decision, are you okay? Sok walked away, chuckling softly. Ha, surprising. Does he really think so little of himself? He looked at the camera with a smirk. Yujin Han, you have no idea your worth. Yujin collapsed dramatically on the gym floor. My monster taming career isn't ready for this. He giggled beside Peace. Was I always like this? Or just trying not to think? There's still pain, he thought, and regret. The worst part is forgetting how fragile we really are. Even now, I'm unsure. I only remember the pain, the losses, names I barely hold anymore. But this time, he vowed, with Peace beside me, I'll shape a future no one forgets. Director Sok stared solemnly. Perhaps Yujin doesn't yet grasp how serious this could become for hunters. Or maybe, he mused, it's just another way for Yujin to protect his younger brother. No matter the reason, he concluded, all eyes will eventually turn toward that boy, Yujin Han. Elsewhere, other guild leaders watched the same footage, now fully alert to Yujin's potential and presence. Hyuna folded her arms, smirking. She knew things were about to get a lot more interesting. In a quiet penthouse, a powerful figure lounged in thought, observing the recent developments with interest. Fingers tapped softly. Interesting. Let's pay Haeyeon a visit. There's opportunity here we can't afford to miss. Elsewhere, Yujin rested with Peace in his arms. They'll soon realize how dangerous I really am. Yujin proudly revealed the handcrafted house to the red beast, Peaks, declaring it their official new home. Peaks purred contently as Yujin cuddled him, explaining he'd now stay safe inside instead of wandering outside. Yerim and others spotted Peaks, rushing over excitedly. "Aw, who's that fluffy little cutie?" she squealed. Despite warnings, Yerim hugged Peaks tightly. The red creature growled, annoyed. Yuhyun stepped in, calmly correcting her mistake. Yujin arrived just in time, chuckling as Yerim scrambled back. "Oh, hey, Yuhyun! What's going on here?" Yujin hesitated, nervously glancing at Yuhyun before finally saying, "The thing is, they're on their way." As cars sped toward the building, Yujin panicked. "What? The guildmasters are coming here to meet me?" Yuhyun calmly assured him. "You can turn them down, you know. You don't owe them anything." Clutching Peaks tightly, Yujin stammered. "But they're S-rankers. It's not easy rejecting such powerful figures directly." Yuhyun growled. "Then I'll send them back." Yujin stepped back nervously. Wait, what if they actually explode?" Reporters buzzed as news spread top guildmasters were gathering, all headed straight to Haeyeon's front gate. Yujin waved confidently, but Yuhyun warned, "I don't want excuses or sudden schemes from you again." Yujin sighed, nodding. "Fine, no tricks. But still, I doubt they'd come without wanting something important." With a determined look, Yujin opened the door. "They want to negotiate. I'll face them directly." Heavy footsteps echoed. The guildmasters entered the room, radiating pressure. Everyone immediately quieted as negotiations were beginning. One guildmaster eyed Yujin silently, calculating. His expression was unreadable, but tension filled the entire room. Yujin forced a smile. His system activated resist fear. Yuhyun introduced him confidently to the waiting guildmasters. A suited man stepped forward. "Excuse me, may I see your hand for a moment?" Startled, Yujin nodded. As he raised his hand, a glowing circle appeared, scanning him thoroughly. The examiner gasped in shock. Something in Yujin's skill data had triggered an unexpected powerful reaction. Yujin flailed dramatically, yelling, "I want to save myself for someone special!" Everyone stared in confused silence. Internally, he panicked. A skill appraiser? They'd expose his S-rank skill and worse, its real function. Visions of chaos flashed through Yujin's mind. If they discovered brainwashing, everything would spiral out fast. The appraiser reached out again. "Just a moment, your hand, please." Yujin hesitated. Peaks growled protectively in warning. Suddenly, Peaks leapt between them, fur bristling. He landed firmly, growling at the appraiser, ready to fight. The appraiser backed off nervously. "It's okay, he's not a bad person." Peaks still growled protectively. One guildmaster asked, "Was that beast trying to use a skill on its master?" Silence followed briefly. Park, leader of Hanshin Guild, and the chairman both observed. "It's rare for a juvenile creature." Moon Hyuna smiled, stepping forward. "No need to appraise, that beast clearly protects its master instinctively." She offered a seat. "Let's not keep important people standing, Mr. Monster Tamer." Yujin blushed, then sat. Yujin looked up in awe. "Wow, she's huge!" Hyuna smiled warmly, towering with natural confidence. She teased, "Didn't know Haeyeon's pretty boy had such a dependable big brother." Yujin smiled awkwardly, still holding Peaks. Yujin wondered nervously, "Are all S-rankers this intense? Will Yerim overpower me like this someday?" Hyuna inspected Peaks closely. "A fire manticore? Fully grown, they're equal to S-rank dungeon bosses, you know." She grinned. "Want to trade clubs?" Yuhyun stepped forward calmly. "Only if you've got a top-tier frost-resistant juvenile creature." And Hyuna chuckled. "So you want him out for Yerim too?" Yujin blinked awkwardly. She grinned playfully. "Don't be greedy." Across the table, murmurs grew louder as tension quietly thickened. Sukwon Choi stood abruptly. Haeon's hoarding all the juveniles, he accused, slamming the table with sharp frustration. Pointing at Yujin, he barked, "You've bought out the market. Now you want to trade too?" Choi growled, "You expect us to work for mounts like delivery boys? Using your brother's name." Choi pointed accusingly, "Do you think hiding behind your brother's guild changes what you're really doing?" He added, "Yoo-hyun's your brother, he'll always protect you. So you basically belong to Haeon anyway." Hyuna stepped in calmly. "That's enough, Choi. Haeon's just one of many partners, not the owner." Yujin responded firmly, "I get help because I need it, not because I've chosen Haeon alone." He gestured at Peaks. "I can only care for so many monsters at once anyway." Peaks mewed. Yujin stepped forward, "Meaning everyone here gets priority access to top-tier mounts, same as Haeon Guild." He smiled. "Isn't that a good enough reason to settle this peacefully and move on?" With a courteous bow, Yujin added, "Truly honored to serve distinguished clients like you first." Peaks mewed. Some guildmasters relaxed. He was scary, but sounded reasonable. Another murmured, "I liked him pre-awakening great athlete." Hyuna grinned. "You tame monsters fine. But that sharp tongue of yours might be your best weapon." Hyuna leaned close, teasing, "With looks and monsters like yours, how about joining the Breaker Guild instead?" Yujin flinched. Wait, I'm not switching teams, especially not if the sign-up benefits don't include my dignity." Yoo-hyun ignited with fury behind him. "She's just flirting." Yujin yelped, "Don't torch the conference room again." Yujin laughed awkwardly. "Okay, maybe for one person, my brother, the strongest flame user in the entire country." A calm voice spoke next. "So, can Seongso Guild just buy you now or what?" Yujin paused, holding Peaks gently. All eyes were on him now, waiting for his next move. "Sure, Songsu's the strongest," he thought. "Their guild and guildmaster could protect me, but is it right?" His gaze shifted sharply. "Why show up this late? It only stirred tension when things were calming. How could I even say yes now? It just make me look desperate and weak." Yujin smiled. "Sorry, that perks for family. The rest of you need to become the absolute best." Hyuna burst into laughter. "I admire your confidence. So you'd rather die as a freelancer?" Yujin awkwardly scratched his cheek. Stubbornness has always been a problem, honestly. Peaks purred for support. "Oh gosh, the pressure," Yujin thought. "Without my resist fear skill, I'd have passed out instantly." "They're intimidating," Yujin mused. "Even when silent, S-rankers radiate danger. It's like standing in a battlefield." He sighed internally. "And yet, I'm still here. How did I survive next to Yoo-hyun again?" Yujin smiled softly, stroking Peaks' head. "You did great," he whispered. "Thanks for sticking with me." One guildmaster chuckled. "No wonder that kid started a guild. He's clearly bold like his brother." Yujin laughed. "Hey, what's wrong with my brother? He's actually way nicer than any of you." He added calmly, "Honestly, I'm harsher than him. He's probably the kindest one in this entire room." And Yoo-hyun's voice rang out from behind. "Do you really mean that?" Yujin turned, startled. Yujin rushed forward with excitement, his small hands holding tightly to something hidden behind his back. He waited near the door, then hugged his brother tightly the moment he appeared to leave. Smiling brightly, Yujin handed over a flower bouquet and card, carefully prepared for his brother's birthday. They laughed together, posing for a picture. Yujin dreamed of school. Proud of his protective older brother, years later, Yujin worked endlessly, rarely home, still remembering the warmth from his brother's silent care. Yujin nervously joined the meeting, trying to speak formally. But the room's mood turned uncomfortable fast. His awkward tone confused everyone. Then laughter broke out, loud and sudden, catching him completely off guard. They couldn't stop laughing. Yujin calling someone docile was too ridiculous. Even the guildmaster found it hilarious. Yujin's efforts to act polite were mocked. They saw through it, laughing harder than ever before. Yoo-hyun stepped forward, protective and firm, warning them not to insult his brother just for being kind. Laughter lingered in the room. Even the chairman couldn't stop wiping tears from laughing so hard. Yujin forced a smile, hiding his frustration, then reached out to take the document with composure. Inside, Yujin questioned their jokes. He knew Yoo-hyun wasn't perfect, but being young didn't mean incapable. Yoo-hyun reassured him calmly. The team had already discussed details and prepared everything before Yujin arrived. Yujin stared at the paper, surprised by their progress. He nodded slowly, ready to take part. Yujin skimmed the contract and paused, confused by a clause about owning a specific new building. A guild leader clarified they needed a facility for creatures and decided Yujin would hold its ownership. Overwhelmed by their support, Yujin teared up, touched by the unexpected respect and generosity he was shown. The terms were clear: a safe place, joint funded, officially granted to Yujin after its full completion. Now all that remained was Yujin's final approval. They handed him the document to sign. Yoo-hyun noticed Yujin's awkward grin, asking if something was wrong with his strangely tense smiling face. Yujin nervously pressed his cheek, realizing he couldn't hide his excitement from the good news earlier. A whole building in Central Seoul was now his. Real estate there was incredibly valuable now. He felt pure joy. Forget the pressure, he was winning big and swimming in absolute personal satisfaction. With confetti falling, Eugen stood proud. His own building, protected by 5 guilds, was officially his. Everyone praised Eugen's success. The new building boosted his influence more than anyone had expected it would. He wondered if Hyun-suk might move her research back, now that resources were more available. During a live interview, Eugen was asked how he transformed into a top celebrity-level public figure. Smiling with confidence, Eugen gave credit to the guilds. He toasted, grateful for their strong support. Now wealthy, relaxed, and adored, Eugen joked about early retirement while enjoying affection from his loyal companion. After the meeting, she thanked Eugen with a playful tone and left while everyone chuckled softly. Another guild master reminded Eugen about a previous promise, his expression unreadable as he turned to leave. Eugen was confused but nodded politely. He wasn't sure what exception the man was referring to. Yu-yun approached, praising Eugen's work, but admitted he missed the meeting's ending from zoning out. Yu-yun reassured Eugen calmly he had nothing to hide and wouldn't do anything against his conscience. Eugen patted Yu-yun's arm, casually brushing off the tension. He understood leadership wasn't always clean work. He then praised Peace, the little fox, for staying calm despite everything during the long meeting. Feeling satisfied, Eugen reflected on the outcome. The contract terms were better than he had hoped. He looked up at the city skyline. His heart-light life suddenly felt clear and full again. Returning home, he gasped joyfully at the dinner spread, surprised and touched by the perfect welcome. Eugen looked at the food, surprised. He asked if it was Myungwoo's birthday or something special. Myungwoo smiled gently and replied he just wanted to do his best to feed Eugen properly. Because Eugen meant a lot to him, Myungwoo said. Eugen blinked, unsure how to respond sincerely. Eugen took a bite. It tasted amazing, like comfort and safety. He grinned, cheeks full of joy. Myungwoo casually asked about Eugen's belongings. Eugen froze slightly, sensing a deeper meaning behind Myungwoo's sudden interest. Myungwoo hesitated, unsure how to explain. His mouth opened slightly, but the words caught inside nervously. Eugen, still eating cheerfully, tried easing tension. He mentioned a new building opening nearby, voice casual. Suddenly, Eugen burst into fake sobs, accusing Myungwoo dramatically of planning to kick him out soon. Myungwoo panicked as Eugen flopped to the floor. He jumped up, confused by the dramatic reaction. Eugen mumbled he'd expected this. Tears welled up. He believed he was just a useless F-ranker anyway. Eugen begged Myungwoo not to cry. He insisted they were both F-rankers, but not the same. Eugen reminded Myungwoo how he'd stood up to higher-ranked hunters and protected people without hesitation or fear. He even pointed out that Myungwoo advised his S-rank brother. That meant something truly rare and valuable. Myungwoo lowered his head, admitting he couldn't even unlock a basic skill. He felt undeserving of praise. Eugen reached out gently. Despite his words, Myungwoo smiled weakly, still calling himself a failure in doubt. Myungwoo smiled warmly, encouraging Eugen to believe in himself. Eugen looked shocked. Unable to say anything, Eugen shouted back, insisting that's exactly what he meant. Myungwoo believed Eugen hadn't reached his potential. Eugen protested again. He didn't want Myungwoo wasting time, thinking he wasn't worth any real investment. Myungwoo excitedly explained, sharpening 10,000 blades would awaken an S-rank skill, Eugen's unique hidden potential. He teased about getting rich from Eugen's success. Eugen ran off embarrassed, not believing a word. Eugen reached out quietly, but paused. Myungwoo waited, his expression unreadable as silence filled the kitchen. Myungwoo spoke first, accepting Eugen's decision. He admitted he couldn't force anyone to stay against their will. He apologized for not realizing Eugen felt burdened, and regretted making him handle all the household chores, but Myungwoo hinted at new information, something important he learned, that might actually benefit Eugen a lot. Then he backtracked in panic, flustered. He claimed he had no right to share it now. Eugen gave in, flustered but curious. Myungwoo called him buddy with a grin, making Eugen freeze. Eugen stammered quickly, asking Myungwoo to tell him. He clearly didn't want to miss anything helpful. Myungwoo smiled again, saying it wouldn't hurt to share, especially before Eugen decided to leave him. He claimed Dr. Seok said there's training for people like Eugen to awaken a special skill. Privately, Myungwoo admitted to lying. He used a fake quote, hoping it would still motivate Eugen. Dr. Seok focused intently on his research, unaware of the strange shadow forming behind his back. A dark figure emerged silently, its presence pulsing with danger, watching the doctor without making a sound. A sealed box burst open, scattering knives across the table. Eugen stiffened, sensing something unusually serious. He revealed a hidden task, confidential and urgent, involving kitchen knives no ordinary person would understand. Without explaining further, he assigned a strange task. Eugen was to sharpen each knife using his skills. Still unsure why, Eugen complied, positioning a blade carefully. He had rarely used his skills this way before. As Eugen sharpened, glowing energy surged, unseen potential awakened, silently confirming his calculated plan was progressing perfectly. As the blade glowed, a counter appeared 1 out of 10,000. Eugen's eyes widened slightly. He grinned triumphantly, revealing the grind could unlock a rare crafting skill, known only to a few. He explained further, the process, though long, could become a dependable and profitable source of passive income. Eugen hesitated, surprised at the number. 10,000 repetitions sounded exhausting, even spread across an entire year. Pumped with excitement, he declared he'd do it himself, knives in hand, ready to prove it. He, still energized by the plan, expressed his gratitude, declaring he'd handle the rest himself. Eugen, watching him leave, quietly muttered he wasn't a burden. He was the whole retirement strategy. He turned toward the Rand lab, ready to visit Haonime, someone he needed to consult. Dr. Siak greeted him enthusiastically, thrilled that Eugen finally opened up about his dungeon-related experience and knowledge. Excited, she proposed starting a lab together, impressed that he researched dungeon systems without external funding help. Eugen reviewed a dungeon sketch, pointing out structural patterns most people ignored or considered random decoration. He proposed a theory that dungeons might follow rules, but admitted he lacked sufficient data to prove anything. Dr. Siak agreed immediately, noting Korea's dungeon count was too low for proper analysis or patterns. She anticipated skeptics would dismiss her enthusiasm, but Eugen calmly reassured her. Fully understanding her frustration, he suggested expanding research overseas. She passionately agreed, frustrated by restrictions on studying dungeons beyond national borders. Eugen realized no one had formed a global dungeon research team, and that was a problem. He recalled the future Dr. Siak would eventually move to America, joining a well-funded research program there. 3 years from now, her team would identify the core rule behind dungeon formations worldwide. The discovery made America dominant, collecting royalties from every country that accessed dungeon-related systems and data. Wanting to keep her in Korea, Eugen unveiled his secret strategy, a dense jiggly buckwheat jelly. Dr. Siak compared Eugen's offering to milk for Santa, an offering meant to attract someone. She casually mentioned Dokebi, a teleporting hunter surrounded by mystery, known only through rare public appearances. The hunter, named after a Korean spirit, was infamous for vanishing instantly during critical, chaotic moments. Despite countless sightings, nobody ever confirmed Dokebi's identity, not even their age, voice, or physical build. Only one detail remained consistent in every encounter: Dokebi's precise, unmatched ability to teleport without trace. Dokebi could teleport anywhere instantly, regardless of distance, appearing even amid mid-air catastrophes or explosive chaos. They became known for rescuing civilians from dungeon collapses and emergencies, earning a reputation for selflessness. However, such unpredictable power also raised concern, especially among powerful groups, wary of unexpected, unstoppable appearances. During secret meetings or armed negotiations, Dokebi would suddenly arrive, bypassing all security without leaving a trace. Panicked guards shouted. Recognizing the intruder, Dokebi had materialized mid-operation, catching everyone unprepared, guns barely raised in time. A gunshot rang out as Dokebi arrived, bullets barely missing as chaos instantly filled the room. Amid gunfire, they dodged every shot, weaving through explosives while maintaining complete control of their momentum. Missiles and bullets collided with the teleportation aura, but Dokebi advanced unshaken, heading straight for the leader. Landing forcefully, they raised a hand, startling the man who failed to react fast enough in time. Dokebi warned him coldly, "Do not fear my strength, fear what I choose to destroy." Dokebi issued a cryptic warning, claiming knowledge of secrets hidden by those who sought power and control. They promised not to reveal anything as long as no one tried to expose or capture them first. With a faint sound, Dokebi vanished again, leaving behind silence and fear in the shaken room. Their untouchable nature made them safe. Every group feared retaliation, knowing Dokebi likely knew their darkest skeletons. Dr. Siak cheerfully roasted buckwheat, explaining her theory Dokebi might be drawn to the smell of it. Dr. Siak cheerfully explained her theory, while Eugen remained skeptical about attracting a real hunter spirit. Lights suddenly flickered off. The library went dark, and an eerie silence settled over the entire room. Eugen noticed the moon through the window, suspecting a power outage had caused the sudden blackout. Thinking it was nothing serious, he reached for his phone and turned on the flashlight feature. Illuminated by the soft glow, Eugen looked around carefully, alert now to the unnatural quiet surrounding him. Dr. Siak stood frozen in the darkness, her phone light revealing an unfamiliar, tense atmosphere around her. Her hand slowly covered her mouth as her eyes widened, fear creeping across her normally cheerful face. Eugen turned, confused by her expression, only to realize something terrifying was right behind him in the dark. A loud shriek tore through the silence, followed by chaos as both of them fell in panic. Papers scattered across the floor as Dr. Siak collapsed, overwhelmed by the shock of what she saw. Eugen supported the unconscious Dr. Siak, bracing himself as books and files clattered around them. A system message appeared. His passive skill Resist Fear had activated, stabilizing his mind against creeping panic. He calmed down, reasoning that this was an illusion, not a ghost, just a fear tactic. Determined, he shouted toward the source, calling Dokebi out directly for the dramatic scare. With a glowing flash, Dokebi appeared mid-air, playfully responding to Yujin's frustration with a teasing remark. Dokebi grinned behind the mask, amused by Yujin's reaction and impressed by his mental composure. Yujin held Dr. Sok protectively, wondering whether that touch had been a real, active skill effect. He cautiously asked Dokebi if they could help wake Dr. Siak using one of their skills. Dokebi scanned him, his name displayed as Yun, but the skill couldn't activate just yet. The system stated the condition wasn't met, but Dokebi realized he could still act on this hunter. Yujin gently checked Dr. Siak's condition, hoping she would wake up soon from the sudden shock. He realized that with Dokebi's support, Dr. Siak might never need to leave Korea for research. Determined, Yujin saw this moment as the ideal opportunity to convince Dokebi to stay and help. Yujin smirked and dismissed the earlier scare, challenging Dokebi's antics with confidence and calm defiance. Dokebi pouted, insisting they'd seen him tremble, then teased him loudly while hopping around like a chicken. Yujin recalled how Dokebi valued pranks, often risking everything just to execute one flawlessly and dramatically. With a daring smile, Yujin challenged Dokebi to a wager he claimed they couldn't scare him again. Dr. Sok slowly woke up in a hospital bed, disoriented but regaining her senses and awareness. Startled, she sat up suddenly, panicking as she remembered the encounter, asking urgently where Dokebi had gone. Yujin calmly reassured her that Dokebi had already disappeared, leaving no trace behind after the incident. Recognizing Yujin beside her, she relaxed slightly, then immediately criticized Dokebi's bizarre outfit with visible irritation. The room fell silent as Yujin listened, both unsure how to properly explain what had happened. Dr. Siak sighed in relief, grateful everything had calmed down without anyone getting seriously hurt. She expressed regret that Dokebi vanished, wishing she could have asked the mysterious hunter many questions. Her research had stalled recently, and she hoped Dokebi's insights could have helped break the dead end. Yujin responded thoughtfully, suggesting that he might actually be able to help her move forward himself. Excited by his offer, Dr. Sok immediately asked if he'd finally agreed to join her lab. Dr. Siak listened closely as Yujin hinted at a method that could help gather more data. He confidently suggested he had a plan, something that could increase their information without leaving the country. Elsewhere, Dokebi overheard the word wager, instantly interested in teleporting in with excitement and curiosity. Yujin proposed bold terms. If scared, he'd obey Dokebi, but if not, Dokebi would obey him. Dokebi burst into laughter, mocking the idea that a low-ranked hunter could ever win against them. Yujin smirked confidently, already aware of Dokebi's identity as a disguised guildmaster with far-reaching influence. His insight caught Dokebi off guard, confirming Yujin had done proper research or knew more than expected. Yujin agreed to proceed immediately, eager to finalize the wager before Dokebi reconsidered the terms. Dokebi suddenly hesitated, sensing something wasn't right. Why was Yujin so eager to enter a losing deal? Wary now, Dokebi zipped around him, demanding to know what he was secretly planning behind that calm face. Yujin stayed calm, thinking Dokebi still didn't know about his passive skill that resists fear effects. His resist fear nullified all intimidation from anything below legendary rank, making victory nearly certain in this wager. When confronted, Yujin feigned innocence and confessed his true motive, being Dokebi's biggest fan in secret. Caught off guard, Dokebi was stunned, confused by the sudden praise and unexpected emotional twist in tone. Yujin reminded him of heroic acts, rescuing lives during disasters, saving strangers without asking for recognition or reward. Yujin continued praising Dokebi, mentioning even the secret pouch of knowledge as a brilliant touch. He shrugged casually, stating he had nothing to lose either way, whether he won or not. Smiling wide, Yujin added that losing wouldn't be bad if he got to assist Dokebi directly. Amused and flattered, Dokebi laughed loudly, clearly enjoying the praise and proudly agreeing with every word. Floating mid-air, Dokebi challenged Yujin again, asking what he'd do if fear didn't defeat him first. Yujin finalized the challenge, 3 attempts to scare him, and 1 success would seal the contract. Dokebi agreed enthusiastically, declaring the deal official and vowing to try scaring Yujin 3 times within a week. Back at the hospital, Yujin assured Dr. Suk he'd deliver useful data without needing to leave Korea. He admitted he lacked academic expertise but offered to partner with her based on the insights provided. Dr. Siak considered his proposal. If she could decode dungeon generation from the data, they'd share profits equally. Dr. Siak promised to work hard on the research, eager to contribute with her full strength. Yujin insisted she was crucial to everything, calling her the true genius, not just being polite. As she teased him for flattery, he checked the date, realizing an important dungeon event was near. Yujin pointed out the newly discovered A-rank dungeon near Aichon, guessing its features with startling confidence. Dr. Siak was shocked by his accuracy. Yujin finally revealed his secret. He came back from the future. Yujin stood, preparing to leave, hoping Dr. Siak would seriously consider everything he had said. He reassured her, though his claims sounded strange, he firmly believed her research could truly succeed. Yujin confidently suggested she ask her uncle to place a bid for dungeon management rights immediately. Exiting the room, he let out a breath. The conversation having gone smoother than expected, Yujin quietly reassured himself he hadn't revealed too much, and things should still go according to plan. Yujin reminded himself the goal was simple. Endure Dakabi's antics calmly for just one entire week. Dakabi launched the first scare, dressed as a witch, smashing the window and offering a cursed apple. Yujin, holding his cat piece, responded dryly meat was preferred. The system confirmed, first attempt had failed. Yujin returned home, announcing his arrival and calling for Myungwoo while carrying a box of supplies. He mentioned finding more dull knives at a thrift shop, planning to continue his blade-sharpening tasks. Dakabi yanked Yujin across the room with a scare, but he hit the ground hard instead. Yujin groaned, reminding Dakabi this was a fear contest, not a deadly trap. Dakabi apologized awkwardly. The system declared a second failure. Dakabi now had one final chance left to succeed. Rain poured outside as Yujin entered the kitchen, casually getting water, unaware of what was approaching. Suddenly, a horrifying wooden creature appeared behind him, slamming the floor with brutal, unnatural force. Yujin calmly faced the monster, knowing it was another scare attempt and sipping his drink unfazed. He warned Dakabi, if this grotesque creature was the plan, it still wouldn't work on him. The monstrous figure creaked forward, grotesque limbs twitching, intensifying the illusion. With an even more terrifying form, Yujin raised an eyebrow, unimpressed, sarcastically asking if this was supposed to be some kind of combo scare. The system announced fear deactivated. Yujin admitted the attempt was close, but ultimately it still didn't work. Yujin felt something bump into him from behind and slowly turned, his calm beginning to waver. He stared at the ghostly figure gripping a kitchen knife, unease finally creeping into his expression. The specter paused, lifting the knife with eerie slowness. Something about this felt different from Dakabi's tricks. A sudden flash of red revealed her terrifying face. Yujin realized instantly, this was no illusion. A loud shriek echoed. Dakabi screamed it was a real ghost, while Yujin casually greeted Myungwoo nearby. Yujin joked with Myungwoo about knives, while Dakabi still trembled nearby, unable to shake off fear. Suddenly, Myungwoo saw the ghost and screamed, collapsing from shock before Yujin could explain or react. Even the ghost seemed confused now, staring blankly at the scene as chaos settled into silence. The masked spirit appeared, groaning in frustration, regretting the impulsive deal made with Han Yujin. Flailing on the floor, the spirit muttered angrily about minions scolding him back in his realm. Yujin blinked, surprised by the outburst, questioning the spirit's logic and strange obsession with contract details. The spirit shouted, imagining the endless nagging from home, deciding dramatically to stay in this world forever. Yujin scoffed, asking the spirit's age. Embarrassed, the spirit whispered over 100, burying his face. Yujin awoke, surrounded by odd noises. The masked figure insisted it was a real Dakabi. Despite Yujin's disbelief, the creature defended its existence, citing the world's monsters, awakeners, and supernatural logic as proof. Yujin reconsidered. The system had changed reality, making ancient myths feel more plausible than modern explanations. Data appeared, revealing the being's name Yun, and showing clear signs of awakened classification and unique abilities. Faced with undeniable evidence, Yujin began to question whether humanity had truly remained alone in this world. The Dakabi finally chose to speak, revealing a truth Yujin didn't expect to hear so casually. He declared that despite existing for a century, his age by system standards was merely 3 years. Yujin processed the odd contradiction, realizing the creature's birth aligned exactly with the system's sudden global activation. It became clear this being hadn't simply appeared, it was born from the very system itself. Yujin pointed at him, stunned. So the system created you? The Dakabi nodded confidently and answered, bingo. Legends claim Dakabis were born from objects aged so long they developed sentience and spiritual essence. By the riverside, time stood still as the dormant spirit remained untouched for over a full century. Encased in silence, the Dakabi slowly began to stir, his memories faint but steadily returning to focus. The moment the system activated, dungeon energy surged, and with it, the dormant spirit awakened at last. Yujin listened quietly, stunned by the revelation. Unsure how to respond to something so ancient and surreal, Yujin analyzed the system's mechanics, realizing it linked their reality to a vast alternate dimensional space. The realization hit, this wasn't just myth. A real Dakabi had manifested, defying every logical explanation. Curious, Yujin guessed the spirit's origin, possibly an old water wheel tied to a family named Yun. Yun was stunned by the accuracy. Even the Dakabi doubted how Yujin knew so much. Yujin smirked and lifted a tablet, confidently reminding the Dakabi who held authority in this partnership. Yujin smiled while holding a tablet, already planning tasks that would put the Dakabi to work. Suspicious of Yujin's grin, Yun asked nervously, bracing for something unpleasant or ridiculously inconvenient again. The Dakabi protested immediately, flopping midair and insisting he wasn't built for errands or repetitive manual labor. Unfazed, Yujin assigned him a mission: gather dungeon intel from restricted foreign territories using covert means. As most nations blocked foreign access to dungeons, Yoon realized the task was far from easy. The Dokkaebi complained again, but Yoon calmly explained the mission's purpose: to help save the world. By gathering dungeon data, they might uncover the cause, and possibly the prevention of future deadly dungeon breaks. Yoon painted a grand image: global recognition, books, plush dolls, and legendary fame for Yoon. Hooked by the praise and perks, the Dokkaebi eagerly accepted the mission with renewed dramatic enthusiasm. Still reluctant about distance, Yoon hesitated, until Yoon pointed out he could simply teleport between countries. Yoon noticed two unique skills: guess who, and cloud walking, unlocked within the Dokkaebi's mysterious ability list. With a new plan forming, Yoon casually called out to the Dokkaebi. Grabbing his full attention, Yoon declared his love with a straight face, shocking the Dokkaebi into silence and total confusion. Internally, Yoon resolved to keep leveling the Dokkaebi until the guess who skill fully activated. Horrified by the sudden affection, the Dokkaebi recoiled. Yoon just smiled, pretending it was all normal. Yoon explained that Dokkaebis, according to myth, were beings that thrived on affection from humans. He insisted that expressing love was now their standard greeting, causing the Dokkaebi to panic instantly. And despite pressure, Yoon could barely speak the words. Overwhelmed by embarrassment and emotional confusion, unable to handle the situation, the Dokkaebi vanished in a puff of smoke, fleeing in silence. Left alone, Yoon smiled at the sky, welcoming his newest ally with calm, quiet determination. Excited guild members rushed into the room, calling out to Yoon with urgency and obvious enthusiasm. They celebrated joyfully, confirming Yoon's prediction he was correct. The dungeon truly turned out to be slime-based. Cheers erupted as the guild realized the dungeon's contents were far more valuable than they'd expected. Although one monster reacted aggressively, the team managed to calm it without damaging their new resource. Yoon learned the slime goo was a rare material. Now Haeyeon Guild had secured a stable income. The guild leaders praised Yoon as a treasure. Though his awkward reaction showed clear discomfort with flattery, one member agreed to join Yoon's plan, promising to try her best with newfound determination and trust. Another offered to track Yoon for safety, which he strongly rejected, citing his overprotective brother's constant interference. Despite objections, they insisted on guarding him as a vital asset, even deploying support without hesitation. Yoon clarified he wasn't a prophet. Real analysis would come from Dr. Siak going forward instead. Yoon fled the room in a panic, overwhelmed by sudden attention and being labeled a breeder. He thought to himself, wishing for a peaceful life, far from pressure and unpredictable public expectations. Despite accurately predicting outcomes, Yoon feared future mistakes and didn't want to be seen as arrogant. Meanwhile, observers misunderstood his retreat as humility, praising his dedication to research more than his own success. The fire manticore was placed inside a glowing maze, needing to escape using speed and instinct. The maze's mirrored walls and traps usually confused most monsters, especially those not trained in navigation. Confident footsteps echoed peace. The fire manticore dashed forward with determination before instructions even finished. With a triumphant leap, Peace cleared the maze in record time, stunning everyone with perfect execution. Yoon proudly hugged Peace, praising his intelligence as observers, admired the unexpected brilliance of the monster. Cheers erupted from the audience as Yoon and Peace were celebrated for their surprising maze challenge success, holding Peace proudly. Yoon thanked the crowd, then addressed viewers, wondering about his sudden rise on television. The scene cut to a past conversation, Yoon being offered a TV appearance by a confident producer. Yoon seemed unsure about going on television, questioning the reasoning behind such a public appearance. The producer explained plainly television would make Yoon famous, whether he liked the attention or not. Yoon held Peace while Yerim stayed alert nearby, quietly assigned as the event's discreet bodyguard. Despite smiling, Yoon felt nervous inside, recalling past experiences where public attention had only caused him trouble. To his surprise, Peace quickly charmed everyone, earning admiration and praise from a crowd enchanted by his cuteness. Audience members gushed over Peace, declaring him the most adorable monster they'd ever seen on television. Watching the cheers and applause, Yoon smiled genuinely, realizing agreeing to this appearance had been completely worth it. After the broadcast ended, Yoon sat down with Peace, relieved everything had gone smoothly on air. He felt proud showing Peace to the world, realizing how lovable his little companion truly was. Seeing others adore Peace too reassured Yoon this wasn't just personal bias. Peace's charm was universal. Social media buzzed with reactions. Yoon began imagining accounts, merchandise, and maybe even music albums starring Peace. Yoon envisioned a future where Peace became famous worldwide. While he thrived as a successful monster trainer, a confident woman approached Yoon, casually claiming she would be the first in line for autographs. As she leaned closer, Yoon was caught off guard by her boldness and sudden shift in tone. She teasingly asked how Peace would even sign anything. Would it be a paw print or something else? Before Yoon could respond, a loud crash interrupted them. A familiar voice called out from nearby. Yoon froze as Guildmaster Moon appeared unexpectedly. surprising everyone by casually checking in like family. Yujin looked up in surprise. Recognizing the woman approaching as someone important from the hunter world, the crowd whispered excitedly. Hyuna Moon, Guildmaster of Breaker Guild, had made an unexpected public appearance. She confidently demanded Yujin stand up, unintentionally stealing all attention from his recent spotlight moment. Hyuna teased him, joking about lifting him like a princess, while Yujin politely declined her suggestion. With a calm pat, Yujin suggested they avoid drawing more attention that could spark wild rumors. Hyuna boldly declared Yujin her breeding partner, sparking whispers around them and making him visibly uncomfortable. Yujin warned her not to say things like that in public, trying to control the situation. She laughed it off, offering him a position in her guild, impressed by his confident replies. Yujin calmly reminded her that even S-rankers have limits. Staying grounded matters more than flashy titles. Hyuna admired his perspective, but something powerful began to activate, cutting their conversation short with sudden energy. Yujin glanced at Peace, quietly admitting he felt uneasy about what might happen next in public. A girl approached cheerfully, carrying 2 drinks, unaware of the tense atmosphere already forming around the stage. Suddenly, a powerful energy burst erupted across the venue, catching everyone off guard with its violent presence. Yujin and Hyuna remained seated at the center as a barrier formed, shielding them from danger. The girl rushed forward, confused and worried, calling out for Yujin as the energy storm intensified. Hyuna Moon calmly requested 5 minutes with Yujin, her tone serious as red energy swirled around them. Without waiting for a reply, she activated her skill, whisking Yujin and Peace into an isolated space. Yujin noticed the shift immediately. Air pressure changed, and Peace growled. Something unnatural was happening around them. Hyuna admitted she'd used a transfer spell, assuring Yujin she'd handle the situation with the event staff. Confused but cautious, Yujin realized he was stuck in her domain, waiting to hear her real intent. Hyuna stood confidently in the isolated barrier, ready to speak freely now that they had privacy. Yujin nervously laughed, trying to lighten the mood while asking what kind of secret she meant. Hyuna warned him not to badmouth others, specifically referencing things he'd said about his younger brother. Her tone sharpened. She implied Yujin didn't truly understand his brother, and may have judged him unfairly. Locking eyes with Yujin, she finished pointedly, "See," making her message clear without raising her voice. Yujin stayed silent, but Peace growled, already sensing Hyuna's intentions and preparing to defend his partner. Hyuna smiled playfully, claiming she meant no harm and asking them both to calm down. She took a step forward, assuring them she wasn't trying to stir up tension or manipulate. Yujin listened closely, still cautious, as Hyuna promised to be direct and honest from this point. She firmly advised Yujin to reconsider how he viewed his brother, hinting there was more to learn. Hyuna questioned Yujin's idealism, mocking how others viewed him as a harmless angel in the business. She warned that emotional attachment wouldn't help if he planned to survive in this dangerous profession. Her voice pressed harder. Did Yujin truly believe in his brother's goodness, or just cling to fantasy? Hyuna challenged the narrative. Could an orphan boy really become an elite through love and kindness alone? Yujin tried to speak up, but Hyuna's blunt words pushed deeper, shaking his thoughts about Yuhyun. Hyuna warned that kind-hearted people could never survive by stepping over others to build lasting power. She offered to reveal the truth about Yujin's brother. His real life as a hardened hunter. A bloodied image of Yuhyun appeared in Yujin's mind, challenging everything he thought he understood about him. A woman, holding a drink, stands in a lively crowd. She reflects on her unexpected career path. She wonders about the contrast between her current life and her past athletic aspirations, feeling conflicted. She overhears a conversation about the powerful sponsor behind her current career, which intrigues her even more. Suddenly, a loud clang interrupts the conversation, signaling a shift in attention towards an upcoming event. A man, angry and aggressive, shouts at her, accusing her of being ungrateful for an incredible offer. A woman reflects on her current situation, realizing her past choices have led her to this moment. She remembers how her path diverged from her initial goals, and how much her life changed. Despite the challenges, she knows her decisions were part of something bigger that couldn't be avoided. She feels the weight of her decisions and braces herself for what might come next in her journey. A fiery explosion erupts as she prepares for the chaos that is now unfolding before her eyes. Amidst the chaos of the flames, the woman looks on, feeling an overwhelming sense of danger. She hears a terrified voice pleading for mercy, realizing someone else is caught in the destruction. The woman's eyes widen in recognition as she hears the name Yoo-Hyun Han, unsure of the connection. The attackers, fearing for their lives, beg for mercy, promising to never repeat their actions again. Suddenly, a brutal event unfolds, leaving behind a bloody scene as the woman watches in shock. A mysterious man steps forward, the eerie sound of his movement breaking the silence amid destruction. The tension intensifies as he draws a weapon, preparing for a confrontation, the air crackling. The weapon clashes, sending shockwaves through the area. He seems unbothered by the attack. He grins, commenting on the strength of his opponent, implying the person is far from ordinary. He smirks, revealing a disturbing truth. The opponent isn't human, something much more dangerous. Yujin holds a fox, seemingly lost in thought, while sitting on a chair, looking uneasy. He listens to the woman's words, acknowledging her comment but struggling to grasp the complexity of the situation. The woman presses further, recalling how the two brothers had lived apart for some time, hinting at changes. She asks him if he noticed the changes in his brother after his awakening, suggesting something more profound. Yujin responds sharply, asking her to be more clear about the situation, frustrated by the insinuation. The woman explains that Yujin's brother is a monster, a threat, and cannot be treated lightly. She warns him, mentioning that if he doesn't stay cautious, he might find himself in danger soon. Suddenly, Yujin's phone rings. The screen shows a message about a disturbing event in the news. She comments on the news, suggesting that the situation has escalated, and something significant is unfolding. As the message continues, she wonders what Yujin plans to do, suggesting he might need to act quickly. Yujin fidgets nervously, his thoughts racing as he tries to process what the woman just said. He begins to speak, mentioning that the woman must have been through a lot but stops short. Suddenly, he grabs his phone, snatching it away, focused on an urgent call coming in. Yujin answers the call, sounding slightly annoyed but ready to listen to the person on the other end. The person on the other end gives him an update, mentioning that his brother is indeed a monster. The woman reflects, realizing how Yujin seems caught in something far deeper than what she initially thought. She admits to herself that she might have underestimated him, but something still feels off about him. Yujin, on the phone, confidently states that after seeing what his brother can do, he can't ignore it. He smiles, realizing that the woman has clearly underestimated him and doesn't fully understand the situation. Later, Yujin is seen in a dark alley, making a sudden decision to change the course of action. Yujin's phone rings, and the woman turns around, confused about the sudden interruption, sensing something's wrong. Yujin, with a smirk, reveals he knows about the situation and how rumors about it spread. The woman reacts angrily, her patience wearing thin, as she prepares to confront him about his arrogance. Her fiery companion hisses, ready to protect her, sensing the growing tension between the two. Yujin grins, remarking that she shouldn't have spoken ill of his brother, who's more than she realizes. The woman reacts, annoyed by Yujin's persistence. She warns him that people will eventually learn the truth. Yujin, unfazed, expresses that he should have realized sooner that he's no different from his brother. With a sigh, he admits he gave her a chance, but now sees her as just like others. A sudden snap interrupts the tension, and Yujin wonders if the woman is warning him of more trouble. Yujin, holding the fox, considers whether this situation will escalate again, unsure of what will happen next. A figure shouts, accusing Yujin of breaking his promise not to hurt someone, a tense situation escalating. Yujin reassures the person, saying he is fine, trying to defuse the situation and calm them down, and the woman steps forward, warning Yujin that if he threatens him, she won't stay silent. The tension rises, but someone intervenes, preventing further escalation. A quick fight breaks out nearby, and after the commotion, someone hands Yujin a drink, and he thanks them, trying to relax. Yujin is informed that his contract with the Breaker team will be extended, although it will take time. The woman, alongside others, prepares for what's coming next, with intense training ahead for the group. Yujin's fox companion looks cautious, sensing something uncertain ahead, as it observes the situation. Yujin continues to observe the team and their powerful abilities, contemplating his own uncertain position in this world. He takes a deep breath, unsure of his place but realizing the need to adapt to his environment. Yujin is scolded by someone for being too close to the woman, warning him she's a bad influence. Yujin responds nonchalantly, unbothered by the comment, while the others gossip quietly around him, unaware. A catchy TV show plays in the background, as the conversation lightens up with some humor. Yujin laughs, correcting the others on his title, as they jokingly call him Monster Daddy instead. Yujin and a friend walk together, carrying large bundles. They discuss the importance of securing their space. Yujin explains that he requested they stop sharpening knives every night, a subtle hint about safety. His friend laughs, acknowledging how nervous others are about Yujin's presence, calling him intimidating in a way. The two discuss getting closer to the management team, thinking it might open up future opportunities. Yujin chuckles, admitting he'd rather avoid going back into dungeons, expressing a preference for safer work. Yujin and his companion arrive at the equipment management facility, discussing the importance of avoiding dungeons. As they enter, they're hit by a rush of heat from the facility's fiery atmosphere, overwhelming them. Yujin, still adjusting to the heat, comments on the intense environment while his companion is in awe. The workers in the facility continue their tasks amidst the fiery scene, focused on their work. Yujin reflects on the facility's purpose, realizing this is where the equipment for dungeons is managed and created. A worker at the facility discusses the high rank of the equipment, explaining it's meant for E-rankers and above. Yujin notices a glowing magic stone and asks about it, his curiosity piqued by its unusual nature. A worker quickly reacts, warning him not to touch anything, clearly concerned about the dangerous surroundings. The worker sternly reminds Yujin that this area is restricted, indicating he's not authorized to be here. Yujin, realizing the misunderstanding, quickly clarifies, mentioning his friend's arrangements and the working space they had been promised. Yujin and his companion walk through the facility, noticing the significant difference in the physiques of others. Curious, Yujin asks if his companion knows how to use the sharpening machine, recalling some past experience. His companion, impressed, comments on the special grinding machine in the room, marveling at its capabilities. The worker explains that this machine is highly advanced, capable of grinding any material with just a command. The worker warns Yujin not to touch it, reminding him they've already prepared a designated working space for him. Yujin and his companion enter a cluttered space, greeted by a pile of equipment scattered everywhere. The companion casually mentions that Yujin can use the manual machine over there, pointing to the equipment. Yujin is about to start, but the companion quickly walks away, seemingly eager to leave the room. Yujin, confused, yells out to stop the companion, questioning whether this is really the working space. His companion, looking uncomfortable, turns back, apologizing, and urges Yujin to stop questioning him, laughing nervously. A worker, busy with their task, notices Yujin entering and greets him with a casual acknowledgement. The worker discusses how their team is already overwhelmed with work, questioning why Yujin is there. Yujin, unfazed, responds that he's simply happy to use the equipment, promising to do his best. He expresses some guilt, mentioning that it feels like his companion should have been the one to help. The companion reassures him, suggesting that Yujin can settle in, even though things seem a bit chaotic. Yujin, eager to try out the equipment, agrees to give the sharpening machine a shot, confident. As he starts the machine, it spins up, and his companion watches, intrigued by the process. The machine hums and works efficiently, impressing both of them as sparks fly from the sharpener. Yujin comments on how impressive the machine is, noting that it's definitely doing its job. The equipment displays stats on Yujin's progress, showing his sharpening success as he smiles in satisfaction. Yujin looks at his companion, who seems a bit concerned, reminding him to be careful with the machine. The companion adjusts their hair, still cautious, and watches Yujin closely as sparks fly from the machine. Yujin focuses intently on his task, the grinding machine continuing its work, the noise filling the air. The companion continues watching in silence, unsure of how to respond, as sparks continue to fly. Yujin remains calm, his expression neutral, as the sharpener hums, feeling satisfied with his progress so far. Yujin looks at the shiny, perfectly sharpened knives, admiring his work, a sense of accomplishment in the air. The companion asks if Yujin knew how to make such precise adjustments. Clearly impressed by his skill, Yujin reflects briefly, wondering if his companion knew how to achieve this level of sharpness as well. The companion's expression becomes serious, hinting at something deeper in his thoughts about Yujin's hidden talents. The scene transitions to a distant memory, showing Yujin walking away, seemingly unaware of the growing tension. Yujin's past is reflected as he remembers his younger self and a time filled with excitement and energy. The companion looks at Yujin, noticing how much calmer he seems now compared to his younger self. Yujin stands up, telling his companion that he has to go train, needing peace to focus. The companion realizes Yujin had been watching him all this time and greets him with a smile. Yujin laughs, apologizing for taking up too much of his time, but assures him they'll meet again. Yujin wonders aloud if his friend, Myungwoo, has the face of a fish, amused by the thought. He reflects on how obvious it is that Myungwoo's true calling is in the water, not on land. Yujin smiles, relieved that he won't have to worry about Myungwoo anymore, confident in his role. The next day, Yujin wakes up to a sense of exhaustion, feeling the effects of his training. Despite only a day passing, Yujin is tired, wishing he hadn't overexerted himself during the training. A group of people discusses Yujin's absence, wondering where he is and why he's not present today. One person mentions that Yujin isn't there because his body hurts from overexerting himself during training. Another person scoffs, questioning if he's really hurt after just one day, implying he might be faking it. They discuss their thoughts on Yujin, assuming he was just using his connections to avoid hard work. A new voice interrupts, questioning the assumption, asking if they truly believe he'd take the easy route. The group looks at the boxes filled with knives, one person commenting on the impressive quantity. They joke about how the so-called nepotist managed to sharpen 1,000 knives, showcasing his skill. Meanwhile, he is seen sleeping, exhausted from the training and tasks he had been working on. The storage room buzzed with machines as Myungwoo began shaping metal, sparks lighting every corner brightly. 3 workers watched nervously from the doorway, wondering if his skill would finally meet the strict requirements. Focused, Myungwoo adjusted the heated blade, sweat dripping while the metal slowly started to reveal its form. He sat alone, grinding steadily, the progress bar inching forward as exhaustion tightened around his tense shoulders. At last, he stopped to rest. Delicious food waited, surprising everyone who hadn't expected such warmth. Everyone gathered around the table, watching as Myungwoo served dishes that smelled better than any feast. A girl tasted a spoonful, her eyes widening with joy while declaring endless happiness beside Myungwoo forever. Another hunter teased her, laughing that calling Myungwoo oppa meant the food was truly something special today. She quickly ate everything, explaining she wouldn't find such meals inside a cold, dangerous dungeon raid again. Frustration showed as she described low-ranked dungeons, wishing to grow stronger and gain many powerful abilities soon. Yujin suggested a risky tactic, but the blue-haired girl shook her head, saying it was dangerous. She explained how low mana was harder to detect than health, causing hunters to collapse unexpectedly inside. Curious, she looked at Yujin, asking his mana level. He answered quietly without any hesitation or pride. Hearing 102, she compared it to her own, realizing his was still much greater overall. Changing the subject, she asked when Yujin planned to leave for another raid, her voice sounding interested. Yujin held the pot carefully, while Myungwoo pointed out exactly where he should pour the sauce. Yujin laughed softly, admitting he wasn't sure if his cooking was really that impressive to everyone. Myungwoo insisted his skills were enough to earn money without hunting, praising his cooking with genuine admiration. Concerned, Myungwoo asked if Yujin was overworking, grinding blades all day and preparing meals without rest. He offered special gloves. Yujin protested, surprised they were rare items, not something ordinary to casually lend. Myungwoo felt tears forming as he clutched the gloves Yujin had generously handed over willingly. Overcome with gratitude, he hugged Yujin tightly, promising never to remove them for any reason ever. Yujin struggled, insisting Myungwoo remove them for bathroom breaks, while others laughed at the ridiculous situation unfolding. Later, Myungwoo dropped a heavy load of sharpened blades into a crate, satisfied with the progress. Wiping sweat, he noted the heat inside, knowing any smithy was always sweltering during long hours. One worker handed Myungwoo a blue towel, saying it would help him feel cooler inside. He explained the towel contained mana stones, which could maintain a comfortable temperature around Myungwoo's tired body. Myungwoo wiped his face, grateful for the kindness, admitting the forge became unbearably hot every afternoon. Feeling hopeful again, Myungwoo thought things were slowly improving as he worked alone without any complaint. Lifting the hammer, he paused, realizing his arm ached and the day had already nearly ended. Myungwoo entered the quiet workshop, raising his hand carefully as he noticed the sudden heavy silence. He looked around the empty room, wondering if everyone else had already finished and quietly gone home. His eyes were drawn to a crystal, softly pulsing with blue light on a nearby table. He stepped closer, amazed it glowed alone without any lamp, curiosity pulling him to reach out. A voice shouted urgently not to touch it, startling Myungwoo so much he jumped back in fear. Myungwoo stammered nervously, insisting he hadn't touched anything, as the other man watched him calmly. The worker explained it was a rank S mana stone worth at least 1,000,000,000 easily. Myungwoo gasped in shock, staring at the crystal, amazed something so valuable was simply sitting here untouched.